Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Gran Turismo Series Racing League Season 38. We're here at Catalonia following on from yesterday, continuing round number 2, and today we're taking a look at EU Division 2. Our middle league guys, what can they do at the twisty and tight circuit that is the Catalonia Grand Prix? I'm your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Brit in the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And, well, it is a pleasure to be here today as we get to see the division that we didn't get to see too much of last week due to a number of technical issues. But I believe those technical issues are on the way out, and fingers crossed we should be able to get underway with some fantastic racing today. Currently the local time is 5:30 in the morning. Our drivers are just getting in their final practice before we start getting underway with potential stock checks. And as we're counting down the time right now with 29 minutes to go until qualifying gets underway, well, we saw a lot of action, a lot of frantic overtakes and ferocious passes in EU Division 1 yesterday. And indeed, there was a very high standard in terms of qualifying and in overall race pace. And with EU Division 2, we get the feeling that these guys will be showing at just as much ferocity and indeed pushing as hard as possible. The format, of course, of this season is GT3 or Group 3 cars in GT Sport as they're known. It is tuning enabled, so Group 3 with tuning means that we've got a good variety of cars, but typically a lot of drivers will go for the Aston Martin DBR9 GT1 because it is the preferred car, but we have seen a number of drivers switch between cars over the course of the season so far, and I'll tell you one thing, the field today is looking quite varied as well. Now, before we pan down to the grid, I wish you all well and I hope you're having a good first half to your week. Well, the fact that today was the first working day back in the United Kingdom after the Easter weekend, as we say hello to Jerry Racecar Driver and Pingo Phone in the chat. And if you are tuning in on Twitch and you have access to the chat function, why not say hello? Don't be scared, don't be afraid, and tell me how your day's been. For me, it's been a good day and I'm really excited to get down trackside and start to take a look at what the drivers can do. Let's do it then, shouldn't we? Well, we are going to continue the story from last time out and we'll give you a quick recap of what happened last week. So a number of drivers are not currently here at the track, so we are waiting for some drivers to turn up. But the Drivers' Championship at the moment in EU Division 2 is being led by the Australian of Opel, who picked up the perfect points tally of 49 in round number 1 last time out, picking up wins in all 3 of the races. He is being chased by the Portuguese driver of FFM Gomez 88, or we'll refer to him as Gomez from this point onwards, and Gomez is also making his way down to the circuit currently. Peachy is in 3rd place at the moment, only 1.5 points behind Gomez on 41 points. The story of the two really was that Gomez was picking up to 2nd places in races 1 and 2, but then saw himself drop down to P4 for race number 3, whereas Peachy saw an upturn of fortunes in the races of last week, picking up a 4th place in race 1 I should say, a 3rd place in race 2, and a 3rd place in race number 3. So the consistency of our 2nd and 3rd place drivers really giving them the opportunity to go for points versus Opel, who is pulling away a little bit. The first driver, however, who we are trying to find one who is actually down at the circuit right now, well, it is our 4th place driver in the Drivers' Championship at the moment, the Dutchman of Me Not Stan, but we'll be referring to him as Stan from this point onwards, or not Stan, actually, that might be a little bit easier and less offensive. Currently on 35.5 points, so a deficit of 5.5 points to Peachy, who is in P3. Stan, last time out, had a reasonable string of results, and indeed, things really had a massive upturn in the final race of the evening. Having picked up 2 7th places in races 1 and 2, a significant tactical gamble, and indeed going all out, saw him in race number 3 pick up a 2nd place. Sorry, not a 2nd place, a 3rd place. No, I'm actually having that corrected right now. It is a 2nd place. He saw him pick up a 2nd place in race number 3, and it worked out very well for the Dutchman in the end as he slides his way into the pits, showing off a little bit for the fans. He, however, is being pursued quite closely by the man known as Slimmy Cam, the British driver here, making his way through the chicane, riding in the Aston Martin V12 Vantage GT3, so a slightly different variant of the Aston Martin machinery, both with V12 6-litre engines, but the V12 GT3 here being the more up-to-date car by comparison with the DBR9, and Slimmy Cam having a consistent week last time out as well, albeit race 3 was a little bit less impressive than perhaps he would have liked. Picking up a 6th place in race number 1, a 4th place in race number 2, and then went downhill a little bit, picking up a 7th place in race number 3. But still good points on the board, seeing him go up to a tally of 32, and he's pursuing Stan at a quite rapid rate. Now, as for Going down to P6 in the championship standings, well, we take a look at the British driver known as Not Nats, as we hear that Chronic Opal has arrived at trackside. Now, Not Nats, the British driver, bringing the Mazda Atenza today, getting our words out. The Atenza being a bold choice, not because of its straight line speed. As you can see there, Not Nats actually hitting the rev limiter at 154 miles an hour in 6th gear going into turn 1, and that's something he's going to be exposed to potentially in race conditions. But Not Nats, last time out, picking up 30.5 points with a good set of results, particularly in races 1 and 3. In race 1 he picked up a 5th place, and in race number 3 he picked up what was a 6th place. Race number 2 wasn't quite as good, seeing him pick up a 8th place. But we wish Not Nats all the best, indeed all our drivers we have covered so far, and Not Nats only 1.5 points off a Slimmy Cam and definitely in contention for a potential P4 in the Drivers' Championship going into round number 2 today. We then got to hop a little bit further down the order, and this is where the points gaps start to become even tighter. And in particular, the one driver who we now need to introduce is Mr. Roland92, who we also know out on circuit as our Duck Killer. Or our Dutch, actually, I should say. I believe he's our Dutch. We keep getting those names reclarified. And it is this man right here, as I understand it, our Dutch 175, making his way around right now at the final corner and onto the start-finish straight to begin another lap. The Dutchman in the Hyundai today are bringing a more grippy piece of machinery, maybe also basing this on what we saw in EU Division 1 last night, with the Hyundai being a very strong car in the cornering sections, particularly sectors 2 and 3, where it seemed to open up quite the advantage over the Aston Martins. And well, what can we say about our Dutch? Well, we could say that he is currently sat on 26.5 points. He is joint on 26.5 points with MDC 3755. We'll talk a little bit more about MDC shortly. But last time out, he picked up an 8th place in race number 1. A 6th place in race number 2, and then things went from good to a little bit worse in race number 3, in the end picking up 10.5 points for what was in the end a 8th place finish. So things didn't quite work out for Dutch, and we wish him all the best tonight as he tries to find a little bit more form perhaps. Perhaps things just didn't work out last week. MDC, who's not currently at trackside right now, we're waiting for him to arrive, is also on 26.5 points. And MDC having some very mixed fortunes last week, in the fact that he picked up a P3 in race number 1, a P5 in race number 2, and then it went really downhill in race number 3, seeing MDC finish right towards the rear of the field. In fact, I think it was almost dead last. And as a result, that's why he lost out on significant points in race 3 in the bonus point rounds, of course, where the points are multiplied by 1.5 times. Now, we come away from MDC and we introduce our friendly Austrian of Pingo Phone, running around as part of the duo that makes up Pingoma's Racing, bringing the Aston Martin DBR9 to the field today. Pingo Phone coming out of the chicane and onto the final corner to complete another warm-up lap. Now, Pingo Phone last week did not have the best of results initially, but saw an upturn of form a little bit later on. To clarify exactly, well, in races 1 and 2, Pingo Phone finished right towards the back in 2 11th place finishes, but then in race number 3 saw the fortunes completely flip with an excellent 6th place finish, seeing them pick up 15 points, in the end raising them to 23, but they're 3.5 points off of that battle for P7 in the championship standings. We then come over to our 10th place man in the championship right now, the Drivers' Championship, and that is Race to Wins Jaff, the Portuguese driver here, making his way through turns 7 and 8 in the Aston Martin DBR9 GT1. A nice livery there with the black trailing into the red from the front to the rear of the car. Blends in very nicely indeed there, Jaff. Excellent work. And we can see that he's on 20 points at the moment and had a very difficult start to season 38. Picking up a 11th place in, sorry, not an 11th place, a 10th place in race number 1, a 9th place in race number 2, and then in race number 3, another 9th place. It just wasn't the greatest of evenings for Jaff on his debut in GTSRL, and we wish him all the best tonight as he goes wide out of turn number 12 and does a 360 spin. More style points immediately there for Jaff, but those style points will mean nothing, of course, when we get into the actual racing. We then got 3.5 points between Jaff and Mr. Watt, the British driver here, running around in the Aston Martin DBR9. We can see we've got a lot of Aston Martins out in the circuit, predominantly DBR9s, the Aston Martins, bar one Vantage V12 GT3 we've seen so far. And Mr. Watt, one of those drivers as well who did not have an easy start to the season. Picking up a 9th place in race number 1, but then ending up right at the back of the field in race number 2, and then picking up what was a very difficult, but in one way hard-earned, you could say, 10th place in race number 3. Mr. Watt really having a difficult time and needing to find some more form tonight. And we can expect that to potentially happen, of course. If anyone's going to be able to do it, Mr. Watt can, the number 32 car there, as he makes his way to the timing line to begin another lap and his first flying practice lap on this set of tyres. You've then only got to go 2.5 points down to K2XR, or K2 as we always refer to him, who I believe is not currently at trackside right now on 14 points. And then the driver who was not able to race last week in EU Division 2, but will be here this week, is the driver from Oh Dear Racing. That is KLS1, the Dutchman here in the Mercedes AMG GT3 2016 machinery. KLS1 not featuring last week, so it's going to be a new entry in the books for the Dutchman today, and let's see how he's able to get on. He has got a mountain to climb if he wants to get up into the midfield of EU Division 2 by the end of tonight in that Drivers' Championship. And we've also got Valive, who was not able to attend last week, the British driver here, making his way through the chicane right now in the V12 Vantage GT3, so we've got two V12 Vantages in the end, and you could see that he might be trying to use the advantages of the Vantage to his advantage and put the other drivers at a disadvantage. Now say that fast 5 times, I dare you. But in all seriousness, Valive right now making his way down towards turn number 1 on another flying lap, and let's wait and see what he can do. Again, another driver who will not be upset by the deficit he's got, having missed out on round number 1 last week, and will be up for the challenge, that I'm sure. That's all of our drivers introduced thus far. As we see more and more people are joining into the stream, hello to you all if you just recently joined, and I hope you're doing well. And let's go back up to some of our drivers further up the pack and introduce them now they've arrived on circuit. And of course it would only be provident that we look to introduce our championship leader right now, and that is Chronico, the Australian here, running in the Hyundai Genesis tonight, and hopefully he'll be able to continue that form of 3 wins out of 3 last week in tonight's 3 races, with his advantage currently leading by 6.5 points. Let's see if he can expand it. Now Pete Giola, the driver who is currently P3 in the Drivers' Championship, has brought the Aston Martin DBR9 GT1. The Finn making his way into the chicane right now, coming into turns 14 and 15 in due course. And well, as we said earlier, and we'll come more into full elaboration now, had a good set of results last week with 2 podiums, back-to-back in races 2 and 3, and a full place in race 1. And he'll be looking to get more results on that podium tonight, that we're sure of. The only other driver who we missed out on initially is Gomez, who I believe is making his way down to trackside right now, if we're able to find him, and that is our P2 man, Gomez. Here he is, the Portuguese driver, also bringing the Aston Martin DBR9 GT1 as he makes his way up towards turn number 1 for another flying practice lap here. The Pin Gomez Racing team in full force and in full colours tonight, and we'll wait and see what he's able to achieve, having picked up 2 second places in round number 1, and then of course that full place finish in the final race of the evening. He'll be looking to continue that form tonight and hopefully make it 3 podiums out of 3, or at least that will be the plan. I believe that's all of our drivers introduced, minus MDC, who's not currently at the circuit. And I'm not sure if we are missing any other drivers right now. We do have a grand total of 12 drivers here, so we are missing MDC, and we are also missing the driver known as, I'll just double check my notes here folks, K2, and we'll wait for them to potentially arrive as we just check our race briefing notes. And we have not heard anything immediately, although we're just decking into the driver's comm box. No, nothing so far. It should be noted that Pies1123 is going to be our driver's side steward tonight, and indeed he is our racing vigilator, so he's making sure that everything proceeds as planned. And well, Pies, being a common hearsay of the GTSRL community, as always, going to be looking to get things underway with aplomb, and hopefully everything works out tonight. But be sure to let me know who you're supporting if you are in that chat tonight. And as we take a look back, we say hello to Diesel71, and thank you Diesel for popping in and saying hello, and indeed wishing good luck to everybody there. And we will see what is going to happen. Of course, we've still got quite a bit of time before we get underway with qualifying. We have got the best part of 15 minutes to go, but we are expecting our initial stock checks to get underway in the very near future. Now, talking about the machinery, of course, we come back to our current fastest lap around the circuit as set by Gomez 88, a 1:45.2. In that Aston Martin DBR9 GT1, it has, of course, been the car that's always been picked whenever we've had a tuning season in the seasons that I've seen of GTSRL. It's been the car that most people feel most comfortable with and can be tuned very well for a variety of circuits, but it's not to say it is the ultimate car, as we saw in EU Division 1 yesterday, with the Hyundais being quite dominant in the end, in the most capable hands. We've got me not standing, of course, in the Aston Martin, but then we've got our Dutch here in that Hyundai Genesis, the more grippy car that lacks a little bit on the straights and particularly at the launch, but if you can get the run down towards turn 1, then you can start to pull away a little bit, particularly in sectors 2 and 3. Meanwhile, as other drivers are making their way around the circuit, we've got the V12 Vantage here, which is going to be another one of those cars, much like the Aston Martin DBR9, it's going to be investing the majority of its chips into its straight line speed and acceleration. A very powerful engine in that V12 Vantage, and well, as for cornering, it can corner with the right setup, but I think it's going to be more focused towards those straights. As we look further around the field, of course, we do have to keep in mind with Mr. Watt coming into the pits right now. We do have KLS1 in that Mercedes AMG GT3, one of the more stable cars in the front engine rear wheel drive category of the Group 3 class, but perhaps lacking a little bit in those mid to high gears by comparison with the Aston Martin, but still a very strong contender, and we wait to see eagerly what KLS1 can do with the German machinery here. And as for other drivers, well, we can see that Pete Giola making his way back out onto the circuit, and as we try to look around, we know we do have one Atenza at the circuit, and that is in the hands of Notnats. The Atenza being a bit of a different pick here. We've got very strong acceleration in the lower gears, although it does not have the best starting sequence, it should be noted, and so the Atenza is going to be one of those cars that's a bit of a gamble, because it will lose out at the start, but the flip side of the coin will be that when it's going through sections such as Sector 3, that second and third gear acceleration is going to be very strong, and as a result, with a good tune, it means that this Atenza is going to be flying through these very nip and tuck sections where there's only small acceleration zones, as Notnats almost puts it into the wall there coming out of the chicane, and then decides to do what looks to be a little bit of a pirouette to get the car off the circuit rather than tuck immediately into the pits. So Notnats having a bit of a difficult time there, and well, now he's going backwards around the circuit. I think Notnats has probably lost his way, perhaps the sat-nav's not working as he spins the car around. But as we're taking a look back at our notes right now, and also to our briefing, all of our drivers making their way into the voice comm box as well, so that way they can hear from Pies on a need-to-know basis in terms of when we're getting started with start checks, any connectivity issues, etc. But what's the form that we saw in EU Division 1, and what can we expect tonight then? Well, EU Division 1 last time out had times of 143s for pole. We're looking at mid to high 143s for pole position, as all our drivers are being asked to go into the voice chat. And as a result, I would say with EU Division 2, given the fact we're already seeing low 45s as set by Gomez, I think we could potentially see a high 44 for pole, or definitely low 45s for that front row. And that's going to be important, of course, to our drivers, because they'll want to be on that front row in the run down towards turn 1. It's a very long run down towards the first corner, and so being on that front row, particularly if you are on the right hand side from the driver's perspective, or the left hand side as we'll pan down to the grid at the start, what it will effectively mean is that you're going to be on the inside for turn 1, and that gives you a very strong defensive position, but it also means that you're in a very, very narrow apex, and so that can cause you some difficulty when trying to get on the power out of turn 1, and also you do have to brake quite conservatively as a result of that, otherwise you're going to find yourself missing the corner and the apex completely. As Gomez makes his way to the chicane then for what is the fifth time. The only other thing that's worth considering is that we did see in the races that the tyres seem to hold up rather well in the shorter races, the 6-lap sprint races, but in the 11-lap strategic race, we did see that some drivers did start to struggle a little bit on their tyres, and it was a gamble from some of the drivers to stay on the same set of tyres after coming out the pits. Of course, it saved them a huge amount of time in terms of the pit stop, but the flip side was that the tyres were pretty much heavily worn, and so they didn't have too much grip compared to a fresh pair of boots, and that's what gave a good number of drivers an advantage, particularly the guys who had to pass Yaya right at the end when he came out in P2, but he was on those old tyres and lost out 2 places, dropping into P4 right at the end of the race. And as we continue to count down right now, we see that Gomez is continuing to improve. We're on a little bit lighter fuel, of course, and that's what we'll be probably aiming for. He'll probably put in a banker and then go for a much faster lap with less fuel in the car. He'll probably try and burn some of the fuel out of it. And I think Gomez is the one to watch tonight, although to be fair, Cryonic Opal has yet to actually set a time out on the circuit. I think he's done a little bit of warm-up, but he hasn't actually set a time, and he could be utilising that as a mental factor to essentially get inside people's heads and play a little bit of an unknown. So that's something which our drivers will be worrying about as well. They will sometimes be thinking about sandbagging their pace potentially before qualifying, but we're about to get our first start check underway and to give you an idea of what it's going to be like in the rundown to turn 1. So as we pan down to the grid for our first start check of the evening, we can see that we have got the Aston Martin of Me Not Stan on pole, alongside him the Atenza of Not Nats. It's going to be Mr. Watt and Jaff on the second row in the DBR9s, and we've got Chronic Opal right at the back in the Hyundai. Let's go, go, go for all of our drivers as they get underway and launch off the grid. And we can see that KLS1 having a phenomenal start there in the AMG. In fact, that was the strongest start of anybody. And you can see he's been squeezed as a result as he tries to thread his way through the front 3 drivers. He has moved up to P4, battling with Jaff into turn 1. And that AMG is going to be on a lot of people's minds now as a result, because of how strong that launch was off the start there. KLS1 absolutely nailed it. But all of our drivers have made it off the grid and are making their way now through turn number 3 on this 1-lap race, of course, but there's no points awarded. It's all about just getting to the end and making sure that your connectivity and that the drivers around you is a-okay, as Me Not Stan and Mr. Watt come to blows into turn 4, and Not Nats goes up the inside of Mr. Watt. And you can see that Not Nats using the grip of that Atenza plus its straight line acceleration there to really put some pressure on Mr. Watt, but he falls victim to a sneaky move up the inside by Jaff into turn number 5 and is spun out as a result, as Jaff essentially has to lift out of it there, sending Not Nats into a pit manoeuvre, and that was very unfortunate for Not Nats. And I think he might be saying to Jaff following this start check, hey, I know it's only a start check, but can you make sure you don't do that in the race, please, because I kindly not take well to it. As we see a number of drivers off at the rear of your pitch there. In fact, we have had a major incident of sorts, and let's just take a quick look back and see what on earth happened there. So it's coming down in towards turn number 7, then you can see that KLS1's going to be on the outside, and there was Chronic Opal who just simply bulldozed his way in, but I'm not sure if there was contact with the rear of Chronic Opal that sent him flying into the cars at Concertina and into turn number 7. There may have been a car behind him that sent him in there, because that's uncharacteristic from Chronic Opal, or has he decided that he's going to unleash the brakes a little bit here just to simply have a little bit of fun. But nonetheless, as they come out the final sequence of corners, then it'll be Me Not Stan who brings it home at this time for the start check. The Dutchman bringing it home by 1.4 seconds ahead of the rest of the field. Mr. Watt and Slummy Cam coming home on the rest of the podium, and Gomez and Picciola picking up the top 5 positions. Pingo Fan and Chronic Opal will be happy probably with what they were able to achieve here, but some of the drivers further back may be wary to the fact that it was a little bit of a clustered nightmare going up into turn 7 and indeed turn 5, as we see Not Nats now coming across the line to complete the start check, albeit creeping across the line here. So we're just going to take a very quick sip of water. It seems as though all of our drivers were a-okay with regards to the start check. And all of our drivers are being asked whether they can see one another out on circuit. We haven't got any phantom cars or invisible cars in the lobby, and it seems though everybody's given the thumbs up that they're good to race tonight as a result. We don't have MDC nor K2. I get the feeling that if they are going to arrive, it would have been during that first start check, given the amount of time we've got remaining. We've only got 6.5 minutes to go before qualifying gets underway now, folks, so I suspect there will be one more start check, and then we'll be getting underway with qualifying, and 12 minutes to see who is the fastest over a single pace lap. But as we ride with Mr. Watt right now, I'll look externally from him, making his way down towards turn 5 after having a little bit of a nightmarish turn at 3 there. Sorry, turn 4 there, I should say. And Mr. Watt looking to do a little bit of drifting, but can't quite get the car to go sideways and then do the switchback there. So I think just messing around with the car right now as we see Jaff making his way through turn 4. And every second really to some of these drivers will be very valuable in terms of the practice here. And just getting themselves a little bit more clocked in with the circuit before we do get underway with the racing tonight. Every little bit of practice will help. And we do have some issues, unfortunately. One of our drivers is reporting they cannot see other drivers, and that is not good news. They are going to try and get that fixed very shortly. We're going to get underway with stock check number 2. As we pan down to the grid for stock check number 2, then it'll be me, not Stan, and not Nats again, starting off on the front row. And well, this time we are going to take a look from our Dutch's perspective, and we'll get a feel for what it's like to launch that DBR9 from further down the order, and how quickly that turn 1 comes up on our drivers. And as they get underway, not having the best of launches there, the Hyundai in front of him, a Picciola, but you can see that our Dutch building up a lot of speed, but then he's got this big cluster of cars essentially all blocking one another off as they come in towards turn 1. He's going to be breaking at about the 100 board, having to take evasive action before going into the back of Careless One, which our Dutch, to be fair, did a very good job of taking that avoiding action, and for it he is rewarded by having the inside into turn 2 versus Careless One, but he will be side by side with Careless One and in a very risky position into turn 3, and you can see he had to back out of it there as Notnats and Gomez came to blows coming out of turn 3 on the outside of it. But a very nice run there by our Dutch, and that was very impressive to see how he was able to position the car as best he possibly could, but unfortunately a little bit of traffic ahead of him stopped him from being able to move up the field there. As Mr. Watt is currently leading this stock check race here, of course remember this isn't for points, this is just for prestige and also to make sure that everybody can live, see and breathe one another out on the circuit. We're charging down towards turn 7 right now, and you can see Mr. Watt holding off Jaff by a small margin it would be at the moment, but me not stand very close behind as well, as we see Careless One go absolutely flying off into the wall there. Very unfortunate coming out of turn 7. That's 2 out of 2 there for Careless One, where he's had an incident at turn 7. Not necessarily his fault, but he has regained control of the car, but it's all the way down in P11 as our Dutch makes his way out towards turn 10 and looks to the inside of Salimi Cam, and Salimi Cam looks to the inside of Alive, and none of them are the better. They all stay in their current positions. And now coming out to turn 12 and up towards 13, 14, 15 and 16. You can see Pingo Phone going very wide there and having difficulty in getting the car under control, but just about does. And Valive looks for a cheeky move on the inside into 13, but it's not really an overtaking point. You rarely see an overtaking to 13 because of how that apex closes up on you. And as they come out the final corner, it's side by side, and Jaff just about pips Mr. Watt to the win in the second stock check race, and me not standing P3, and behind them it's Valive by the smallest of margins ahead of Slimmy Cam, Pingo Phone P6, our Dutch P7, Gomez P8, Notnats P9, Picciola P10, Careless One P11, and Krynik Opal coming out the final corner, last but not least of our drivers in the second and hopefully final stock check of today. So 2 stock checks complete. Fingers crossed that everything will be resolvable. As I say, we do have one issue for one of our drivers who cannot see another driver in particular, so we're just waiting for that to be resolved. That may set us back by a couple of minutes, but it shouldn't set us back by too much of a margin. And then we should be able to get underway with some qualifying and bring you EU Division 2 tonight. As we stay with Jaff for the time being as he makes his way through turn number 3. And following Jaff around up towards turn 7, 8 right now. Very nice looking at Aston Martin, as we said earlier on. And we're interested to see how Jaff is able to do in qualifying and see if he's able to arrest the form that he saw in round number 1 and pick up some good results. He's definitely got good pace here by the looks of things, so long as he keeps within the track limits. Track limits there at turn 9, of course. If you put all 4 wheels beyond the white lines, you are going to be picking up a ½ second to a 1 second penalty, depending on how far you go beyond the white line. And that's something which Jaff will be very well aware of now, having picked up that penalty there and then. But we are waiting right now for things to get underway, and I think we are going to be proceeding very shortly. Just waiting for confirmation from our steward, i.e. from Pies, and then we should be good to go. Now, one thing I haven't actually mentioned so far with regards to the championship is the team standings. That's a good point. We've actually missed that, as we're getting another start check underway, and hopefully after this one we should be getting qualifying. Team number 3 on 75.5 points, consisting of Chronic Opel and also the driver known as Ardutch. Having the best of form so far, but they're only 4 points ahead of team number 2, consisting of Peachy and Notlatch GT. And then we've got a little bit of a gap to P3, which is held by Ping Gomez Racing on 65.5 points, only 6 points off of our second place guys, and it's 3.5 points down to team number 6, consisting of Me Not Stan and MDC. MDC not racing tonight, meaning it's on the shoulders of our lead man here, Me Not Stan. And as they get underway for the third and final time of Stuck Check Asking, we can see that then there is a sizable gap to the rest of our drivers in the Constructors' Championship, or our teams we should say, with Team 4 consisting of K2 and Jaff in 4th with only 34 points. They're being closely pursued by Team 7 consisting of Careless 1 and Slimmy Cam. Of course, with K2 not being here today, we'd expect that Team 7 can jump Team 4. And then Laser Tools Racing consists of Mr. Watt and Valive, currently sat in last place on 16.5 points, with Valive missing last week's races. So all the work was on Mr. Watt last week, but now they're both here this week, they can pick up some good points. So that's the Constructors in a nutshell, and as they all make their way round on the third and final start check here, we have just received confirmation that after this start check we'll immediately be getting underway with qualifying. So we are a couple of minutes behind schedule right now, folks, but we will catch up with due time. And as we continue to look for our notes here, there's nothing else to note, so we are pretty much good to go racing, as everybody is making their way around the circuit right now. And I think now people are starting to calm down a little bit, although we do see some drivers go very wide out of turn 9. They're being caught out by the dirty air of the cars in front of them. That will cause them to understeer off a little bit, and that's something they will need to be wary of, because they understeer beyond the track limits, as Valive gets it very wrong there. Coming out of turn 10, getting on that power a little bit too soon, and Careless 1 picking up a ½ penalty for his troubles there. Not sure how Careless 1 was able to pick up that penalty, but it's happened regardless. And as all our drivers now make their way down towards the chicane to start to complete their lap, we're going to see that I think it's going to be Notlatch this time who just about holds on to the win, or is Me Not Stan going to try and squeeze it out the inside, riding in coming out of 16, or will it be Jaff? It's a drag race to the line, and the Atenza has just about got it ahead of ahead of Stan and Jaff, and it'll be Careless 1 and Peachy rounding up our top 5, followed by Mr. Watt, Pingo Phone, Chronic Opel, Gomez and Slimmy Cam in our top 10, Valive in P11 and Ardutch in P12. Alrighty then, folks, well, with 3 stock checks completed, it is time for us to get underway with qualifying, and I think our senior steward here is going to be giving us the go, go, go message. Yep, there it is, qualifying, 12 minutes, go, go, go. So our drivers are now going to be piling out of the pits and immediately getting out there. Well, I say they're going to be piling out the pits. Our first driver has made their way out, and it is going to be the Dutchman of Ardutch, who will be the first driver out of the pit lane. Quite a long pit lane here, of course, so every second is going to count when you make your way out. But as he revs his way up towards 4th gear, up towards 5th gear, and now into turn 1, Ardutch is going to be leading the field away, as we see behind him Careless 1 and Me Not Stan very quickly getting out there. Me Not Stan, they're going a little bit beyond the white line and corrected himself. I don't think he's going to get told off too seriously, because that was during qualifying and he corrected it immediately. But I think in the race, if he does that, because we do run the pit lane limits, of course, with the white line upon exit, then he's going to be subject to a potential potential penalty, or at least some penalty points on his racing licence. As they all make their way around the circuit, we do know, of course, that our drivers are not permitted to use the slipstream of one another in qualifying trim. They have to do their laps on a completely clear track, i.e. they have to do it without anybody in front of them giving them a tow along the straights. Not well, at least not by intention, but if a driver ahead of them makes a mistake and gives them a tow accidentally, then an exception is made. But all our drivers are making their way around the circuit right now. Me not standing, weaving the car coming out of turn 6 and up into 7, just to get a little bit more heat in those racing medium tyres. All our drivers, of course, being expected to use the racing medium compound throughout the series, and they now make their way down towards turn number 10. Now we are going to see a bit further back that some drivers may be going for a fuel burning strategy here, and I think in particular you can see already that Pingo Phone may have gone for a little bit of fuel burning, or at least taking his time, and Chronic Opal is definitely 100% going for fuel burning and making a near miss of the gravel coming out of turn 5 there, and Chronic Opal going for the immediate fuel burning to try and get the car as light as possible. But speaking of people who are going to be light, Dutch will need to be light on his feet as he moves on to his first flying lap, and the first flying lap of anyone around the circuit. Let's take you on board and take you round. So without further ado, our Dutch takes us across the timing line and commences the lap in his Aston Martin DBR9 GT1. Making his way down towards turn number 1, you can see that he has geared this car for acceleration and hitting a top speed of approximately 162 miles an hour as he brakes into turn 1, clipping the apex, shifting it down to second gear there, looking for a better launch out of second gear rather than third gear. And now coming up towards turn 3, very smooth through turn 2, it should be pointed out, getting a nice close apex at turn 3, but perhaps not getting on the throttle as early as perhaps he could have, or carrying enough speed through the apex to use the full width of the circuit. Now coming up to turn 4, snapping it down on the brakes there and using second gear to get the car nice and tight to the apex there. I think he's having a little bit of difficulty getting that front end turned in. The Aston Martin doesn't actually want to understeer a little bit, and perhaps this tune just hasn't quite taken away that understeer element, and he's using second gear downshift in order to do that. But a nice hairpin there at turn 5, and now coming through 6 up into 7. Will he go down to third gear here or second gear? It's down to second gear, so our Dutch not confident to carry all the speed through turn 7 and 8 there, whereas I know a number of other drivers will be in third gear there and absolutely putting it down on the throttle and having a stamp on the brakes. Coming through turn 9, so this is a bit more of a conservative lap from the Dutchman, but still it's looking a relatively clean lap so far. And now coming up to the final sector here, braking into the turn 10 hairpin, coming all the way down to second gear, missing the apex by a tad. That's going to cost him about a tenth at least. And now coming up towards turn 12, and now bringing the car nice and tight round the corner here, but he's got to be very gentle with getting on that throttle in second gear because the rear end is going to light up. It's front engine rear wheel drive, those rear wheels will want to deploy all the power available to them as soon as possible. And now coming through the chicane, riding it right over the central curves, just got to be careful not to cut them too much or bounce over them, and running a bit wide there out of the chicane. And as he comes around the final corner, he's going to complete the lap, keeping two wheels on, but because he ran wide on the chicane, this lap does have to be aborted, and it's a 47.1 instead of what could have been, say, a 46, as Careless One sets a 45.6, sorry, a 45.9, and Me Not Stand, how does he respond? Well, it's not a sizable lap so far, as Pichiello comes across to set a 45.7, Valave comes across with a 46.6, and Mr. Watt moving up to a 47.6 on his opening lap, and Gomez setting the provisional pole lap of a 45.0. So Gomez already going 2/10 faster than his ultimate time in his practice session at the start of tonight's racing, and we can see that Gomez is the man to beat for sure. 6/10 up on everybody so far, as Not Nats has come across the line in provisional P6, subject to more laps, well, 146.793, placing him right in the thick of our drivers. A lot of drivers setting 46s on their opening qualifying laps. A bit further down the order, however, Mr. Watt with that 147.6, just struggling a little bit, Mr. Watt, and of course a number of drivers having to abort their lap due to penalties, as we see Chronic Opal is still making his way around the circuit and doing a tremendous amount of fuel burning as the Australian. I think the environmentalists in Europe will be absolutely raging at that. I know one in particular will probably be saying, how dare you, but we're not allowed to name that person due to copyright reasons, or they'll say, how dare I name them. But we can see that the Australian here showing no concern for the environment whatsoever and just polluting the skies, and we love it because we're now going to get a flying lap from the hands of the Australian driver. So as he comes around the final corner then, let's ride on board with the Australian and let's see what he's able to do, and is he able to pip Gomez to provisional P1. So as he rolls down towards turn 1 here, absolutely putting his foot to the pedal here, and we can see that he's building up speed gradually, but that Hyundai really losing out in the acceleration down towards turn 1, an entry speed of 160 miles an hour, braking down to 80 miles an hour, and by the apex 78 miles an hour. But you can see how the Hyundai is just so much more capable in terms of its grip, that mechanical grip over the corner apex there. And as he comes through turn 3 using the full width for turn 3, and this is what we were looking for the ultimate laps, and now breaking into turn 4, and it's already 9 thousandths faster than Gomez. But remember, the Hyundai is weaker than the Aston Martin in sector 1, so we would expect that he's going to be very close, if not behind Gomez. But now in sectors 2 and 3, this is where the Hyundai should really unleash its pace. As we can see there, Chronic Opal using a symmetrical line for the turn 5 hairpin, which is a bit of a risky one because of how wide you can run off of the hairpin, but getting it nice and tight through turn 7, up into third gear as he makes his way through turn 8, and now bringing it up to turn 9. Is he going to come down to third gear? No, stays in fourth, tucks it on the apex, and just about keeps it on, I think. Not 100% sure. I think he had to open the steering. That may be a half-second penalty for his troubles here as he comes down into turn 10 hairpin. It's not a penalty, it was just in, and he is 2.5 tenths up, so it's much faster through sector 2 versus Gomez. And as he makes his way through the final sector here, let's see what the Hyundai can do, and this is where it should really shine versus the Aston Martin, with strong brakes and good overall low speed acceleration, or low gear acceleration you could say. And as he clips the turn 13 apex curve there, coming into the chicane, and nicely tucked in on first gear into 14, and a good run out of 15. It's only one corner that separates him now from his provisional qualifying time, and as he comes out the final corner, it is going to be a 1 minute 44.7, so 3.5 tenths faster than Gomez. And now how does the Portuguese driver of Gomez respond, as we see Slimmy Cam has spun out at turn 7. I'm not sure what happened there. I think he ran a little bit wide on entry. But Chronic Opal setting the times, and now Pete Giola, the Finnish driver here, currently on a 45.7. Well, what can they do as they miss the apex to turn 14? And that is going to be a penalty, I believe, unless he aborts it to the pit. So Pete Giola has to go back in for a fresh set of tyres. And Careless One, meanwhile, the Mercedes driver here, the only Mercedes out in the field right now, well, making his way up towards turn 3 and on another fast lap. And let's see what the Oh Dear racing machine can do. The bright orange machine in the Dutch colours, of course, you see orange wherever you go in motorsport with regards to Dutch fans, particularly if you're looking at Max Verstappen in Formula 1. And as he makes his way into turn 4, he's only 24 thousandths down on his previous best. So I think Careless One is feeling that wear on the tyres because he hasn't pitted for a fresh set since his previous flying lap. And that means he's starting to experience that wear on the front left in particular, because what with this being a clockwise circuit, we expect there are more right hand corners than left handers, and so the left hand tyres will take the greater wear, of course, as Careless One makes his way through 7 and 8 going uphill. And he's got to be careful there not to drop off the curb into turn 8, otherwise he's going to pick up a half-second penalty. He just kept it on there, but that was very close to critical. As he comes down towards the end of sector 2, will this be up or will it be an issue? Let's wait and find out. It is an improvement, but it's 1,000th off his previous best. I think Careless One needs to go in for a fresh set of tyres, and he will have one more lap if he does right now, with there being only a quarter of the session remaining. 3 minutes remaining in a short order, folks, and that means we're coming down to our last couple of flying laps right now as we hop away from Careless One, assuming that he is going to be pitting at the end of this lap, which is going to follow him to the end, and then we'll hop over to another driver and see how the field is shaping up right now. And Careless One staying out there, and I think this is a poor move by Careless One. He's picked up a half-second penalty for his troubles at the chicane, and it means now he has got to commit to essentially running another 2 flying laps on those worn tyres. He will not be able to get it to the pits in time. Or alternatively, if he does return to the pits, he is going to refuel the car with fuel, because of the way the pit stops work here in terms of an auto return to pits. But meanwhile, one man who's not having any trouble and going faster and faster is the Australian Chronic Opal. But he does have Slimmy Cam ahead of him, who with a 0.9 second penalty and is going slower than him, might struggle to essentially get out of the way, because Slimmy Cam doesn't appear to be, well, no, he's on an outlap, so he is obliged to move out of the way if he notices Chronic Opal is coming right now. But the Australian is on a charge, and I don't think it's letting him phase him for the time being. But now the issues begin as he tucks out the dirty air before rotating into turn 9, and you can see he's wary of the fact that he's essentially going to be compromised a little bit if he runs too close to the back of Slimmy Cam up into turn 9. But a very nice line there, and Slimmy Cam gets out of the way, but the damage has been done a little bit. As you can see, Chronic Opal is a 10th down on his previous best. Now with regards to Gomez, still in that 45.0 so far, and as the Portuguese makes his way onto another flying lap, and this will be his second to last flying lap. I think he's timed it with just enough to do one more. It is going to be a case of what can he do to beat Chronic Opal, or does he just go about securing his spot on the front row next to the Australian? We'll come back to him as we see Slimmy Cam right now having a real nightmare of getting the car around the circuit. on what is his warm-up lap before his final flying lap on a 45.5 so far, so he's only half a second down on Gomez, and he has got a security buffer of 1.5 tenths to Picciola, who's in P4. But I think in the case of Slimmy Cam, he's just having a lot of difficulty in getting that Vantage V12 straightened out on the corners, and you can see how unstable that car is. But it's that instability that's giving him the good apex speed to the sector 1 as he gets underway then with a flying lap and makes his way down towards turn number 1. Let's see how he goes into the first corner. It is going to be a brake entry speed of 159 miles an hour, so a little bit down on our DBR9s today, but a little bit higher than our Hyundais, of course. And he gets a nice flow there through turns 1 and 2, and coming up into turn 3 now, he's going to be lifting off the throttle initially on entry, and then absolutely whacking the throttle when the nose bites in. And again, not using the full width of the circuit, unlike what we saw with Chronic Opel. But as he comes up to the end of sector 1, it is not an improvement. He is down by 2 tenths. But speaking of somebody who is working hard right now to try and improve, he's only 7 thousandths down his previous best. It is Careless One, who is on that 45.7 and is only 14 thousandths off of potentially being on the second row versus Picciola. Although I say that Picciola now improves to a 45.4. And Picciola doing a very good job there of getting a 10th over Slimmy Cam, albeit he's 3.5 tenths down on Gomez. So I think that was an effort just to get himself up onto a definite second row spot. Although I say that, Notnats improves to a 45.4 and just crosses the line before the timer closes down. So a number of drivers now have got to complete their laps as our steward advises them as well. And we can see Pingo Phone will not be improving from a P8 right now on a 46.5. So we'll wait to see what Pingo Phone's able to achieve as our Dutch is parked up off the circuit at turn 1 as well. And as Jaff now comes into the final chicane, of course, the Portuguese driver, having had a very difficult time in qualifying so far, is he able to improve? It has been a disastrous qualifying session thus far for Jaff, and as he comes out the final corner, will this be enough to get him up into the top 10? He goes wide out of 16, too much throttle there, he gunned it too hard, and whilst it wasn't improving, it's not going to count. That is a disaster for Jaff as he calls his qualifying time to an end. Chronic Opel did not improve in the end, but I think he may have done enough as Gomez is making his way around right now behind Picciola, and we can see that Notnats as well on a flying lap. And looking around the field, Careless One improving, as we said earlier, to that 45.7, and in that provisional P6, subject to any drivers that are coming across the line. The next driver to come across the line will be Me Not Stan right now, as he's making his way through the final corner, keeping it on the track limits, as our drivers are expected to, and as he makes his way out of the final corner, going way too wide, and that is going to be an aborted lap. It will not be an improvement, and that means he'll be starting at P7, if not further back. Picciola coming out the final corner, and it is not an improvement from Picciola. What about from Gomez? Coming across the line, it's not an improvement either. And I think that means, unless anybody else is out there on a hot lap right now, is going to... No, that is the end of qualifying, ladies and gentlemen. So your pole position sitter for race number 1 will be this man right here, the Hyundai of the Australian driver, Chronic Opel, with a 144.7. He will be joined on the front row by Gomez, who was just 4 tenths back, the Portuguese in the Aston Martin. The second row of your grid will be started off by the Mazda Atenza of Notnats GT, the British driver doing a phenomenal job in qualifying with a 45.4, and beating Peachy Erla to the front of row 2, the Finnish driver here, who looks like a piece of curbing. We're not sure where his car is. He's probably in hiding. Lining up alongside him, it'll be Slimmy Cam on row number 3, the British driver of 45.5, joined alongside by the Dutchman of Careless One, who's got his Mercedes into a comfortable midfield position, and it will have a strong launch into turn 1, of course. Me Not Stan, the Dutchman, will start off your 4th row, and alongside him will be the Austrian of Pingo Phone in the Aston Martin there. And the 5th row of the grid will be started off with Valave, who had a quiet qualifying session and picked up a nice time of 46.6, and alongside him will be our Dutch 175, who was very close behind him in qualifying. And then we'll see that the 6th row and the final row of the grid will be started off by Jaff, and alongside Jaff will be Mr. Watt. These two drivers not having the best qualifying session, but perhaps they've got an ace up their sleeve going into the race. So that's qualifying done and dusted, and now we're just waiting to get underway with race number 1. It is worth keeping in mind, though, of course, qualifying is not necessarily fully reflective of the race, in terms of a driver may be very strong over a single lap, but when they go into the race, they may struggle running around Catalonia over multiple laps and with cars around them, and with tyre wear also becoming an increasing factor. So we'll wait and find out, of course, but that is a very good time by Chronic Opel. It's approximately, if I remember correctly, about a second off of what we saw for pole in EU Division 1, so it lines up with our expectations pretty much. We were saying the high 44s to low 45s. tries for pole, and indeed we have seen only one driver make it into the 44s today, and it was the Australian, although Gomez was not far behind in getting into those 44s. Will he be ruining this opportunity in terms of missing out on pole? I don't think so, Gomez, because he'll know that he'll be on the inside into turn 1, and if he can get the legs on the Hyundai of Chronic into turn 1, then he'll be best placed. But of course the question will be, how quickly will Chronic go defensive into turn 1? As we saw yesterday from Olaf, going immediately defensive if you get a good launch is invaluable in the drag race into turn 1. Now, Notnats, of course, will be a bit of a hidden element in the fact the Mazda Atenza is a little bit slow off the line, but once it gets going, it launches very quickly. Once you get past first gear, second, third gear are very strong in the Atenza, and Notnats is going to be a force to contend with, and I think some of the drivers around him may pip him a little bit, but as we go into the first sequence of corners rather than just turn 1, I think Notnats could be a little bit of a trouble driver. And then this man here, Callis 1 in the Mercedes AMG. We saw in the practice starts in the Stuckjet races that the AMG was very strong off the line. What will he be able to do from P6? We'll have to wait and find out, but it's going to be an interesting one because he is a wild card here. We haven't seen any Mercedes AMGs other than his own, and that means he is in a completely separate universe in terms of the car choice, and that means a lot of drivers will have their eyebrows up and be watching Careless One with feverish intent in race number 1. And as we look back to the chat, of course, we say hello to other drivers who are not other drivers, other viewers. Some of them are GTSRL drivers, including Vitor Knight 21, Olaf Biscuit, Luco33. Hope you're all doing well, guys. And also Pete Chiola, who said that he switched to a wrong setup for the third time of saying that, and second gear had no power at all. Well, that's a little bit unfortunate, Peachy, but hopefully you fix that going into the races because we want to see you up there and fighting. Now, as we're waiting to get underway, of course, I don't think we've got too long to wait. Now, if you haven't already got yourself a drink or a snack or quickly pop to the bathroom, now's the time to do it with urgent haste because race 1 is going to be coming at you any moment soon. And Pete Chiola there reporting to be very happy at qualifying, the fastest that they've been all day. And well, that is a very good start to the session for Pete Chiola. And let's see if they're able to carry that momentum into race number 1. And as all of our drivers start to make their way out onto the circuit, then we'll be getting that countdown call very soon. Well, we hope we're going to be getting that countdown call very soon, unless somebody's taking a very last-minute comfort break. We're just waiting right now. I think our drivers are being given a last-minute warning about trying to keep it clean into turn 1 because we did see a lot of opening lap incidents in all 3 races yesterday where some drivers got squeezed very heavily and other drivers started to lean on other drivers. Where on cold tyres, leaning on other drivers' car is certain doom to the driver who you lean on because you've only got to pit manoeuvre them and that's their race completely in the bin. I think it's all good between our EU Division 1 guys, but of course our EU Division 2 guys will want to get racing. They want to listen to the stewards, but they need to listen to the stewards nonetheless. But we are just literally counting down now. It's going to be any moment now we will get that call for race 1 to get underway. As we just follow the Mercedes of Callis 1 round and we ride on the front bumper. And it is worth noting that despite the fact it is quite a heavy car and quite an understeery car by natural nature, Callis 1 there having a lot of confidence to absolutely put the throttle down through the final corner of turn 16 and just carry the momentum through. So he's definitely feeling very comfortable with the tune he's applied to this AMG today. And you can see just how stable that Mercedes is going through the corners. But we are getting the call any moment now, I think, folks. We're just waiting for the briefing in our right hand here. Yep, race number 1 is about to start. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We've had the thumbs up from Pius to say it is time for us to race. Well, I hope we get that countdown very shortly, otherwise you'll think that I'm a fibber. Any moment now we should be getting that countdown. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen, race 1 coming right at you. It is time to go, go, go. Who's going to be on top by the end of the first 6 laps? So as we pan down to the grid then, it is Chronic Opal on your right, and on the left-hand side it is Gomez. Behind them, the Atenza of Notnat. What can he do from P3? And Careless One in P5 with a penalty being applied to another driver. What can Careless One do, having been promoted 1 place up the order? It's lights out and away we go, and there's a little bit of confusion with regards to the race start, but we get underway nonetheless, and we can see that Chronic Opal already making a very good start, and Careless One coming between Picciola and Notnats down into turn 1 here, and I think he's going to be sandwiched a little bit by the Atenza Hyundai combination, and he's broken very early, and Valive makes a mother of all lunges up the inside into turn 1, and it has worked, but he's taken a huge gamble for it, and Gomez has made his way round the outside of Chronic Opal, up through 2 and into 3, up into the lead. And now as they charge their way up towards turn 4 for the first time of asking, we can see that Chronic Opal not too fussed about the fact he lost out there, and Picciola taking a little look up the inside of Chronic Opal, I think realising that it wasn't on, and Notnats is following through. So a little bit of change up front, but behind, Careless One has got himself back up into P5, and Jaff has come out of nowhere, although I say that he goes very deep into the hairpin on cold tyres, and it finds him on the outside as everybody's trying to come through, and as they all charge down towards turn number 7, you can see that he's battling side by side with Alive on the inside, and now as they switch back into 8, Jaff is going to have the momentum out of turn 8 and carries it all the way through up into 9, and behind now Alive is getting pressure from Slimmy Cam. Well, how about that, folks? And we thought Jaff was out of it in qualifying, and he's back up there in the race trim. As they all make their way into the hairpin, we can see that our top 5 are simply having a peaceful existence, whereas Jaff is under a huge amount of pressure as Slimmy Cam tries to go around the outside of Alive through the hairpin, and it's not going to happen, and he tries to find a way through into turn 12, but Alive just simply takes the race in line. Slimmy Cam is not close enough to be able to achieve it, and as they come into turn 13, we can see all our drivers making it through in procession, although Pingo Phone going for a move around the outside of Mr. Watt, but as they come around to complete lap number 1, it is Gomez leading ahead of Chronic Opal. Chronic Opal in P2, followed by Picciola, then Notnats GT. Behind them it is Careless One with R Dutch picking up a penalty and having to burn it, meaning that Jaff is now going to be drag racing R Dutch down into turn 1. And for the battle for P6, behind them it's for Live and Slimmy Cam battling for P8, and then Pingo Phone having cleared Mr. Watt, and Me Not Stand also getting through, meaning that Mr. Watt is at the back of the pack right now, as we saw in your picture just there. But Slimmy Cam and Live continuing their fight from lap number 1, and Slimmy Cam finds his way past round the outside of Live into turn 2, and as they make their way out of the corner right now, I think Live's going to be trying to come back at him as we ride on board with the British driver here as he tries to follow his way through past his fellow countrymen in the V12 Vantage, of course, much like Slimmy Cam here. Both of the drivers in equal machinery, albeit they may have tuned them differently, but the point still stands as they make their way up into turn 5. Slimmy Cam a little bit earlier on the brakes than Valive, and you can see just how he's having to bide his time right now, Valive, and try to find a way past it in due course. I don't think he's going to want to force it yet, because he could fall back into the clutches of Pingo Phone, who he's got in his left-hand rear-view mirror, as we can see from the onboard, as Valive gets it very sideways going onto the exit curb there, up onto turn 8, and that means he's lost the momentum, and now Pingo Phone and Me Not Stand have both found a way through, and that's not what he would have wanted. He immediately tries to snap back at Me Not Stand, but Me Not Stand gets a little bit of a tank slapper out of turn 9, and that sends Valive onto the dirt, but he's rejoined, everybody's calmed it down, and hold on a second, Slimmy Cam has lost control of the car, and he rejoins onto the apex of turn 11, and I don't think Stan's going to be happy with that, because that was a near fatal incident for Stan's Racing Oats in race 1, but fortunately nothing too bad came of it. But meanwhile up front we can see that Gomez is really struggling to break the toe from Chronic Opal right now, who is 2/10 and slithering all over the back of the Portuguese driver, the Australian sizing up his opponent, and Picciola just watches on with popcorn in the cockpit, of course, just keeping an eye on the top 2 as they battle into turn 1. Chronic Opal on the outside, Gomez on the inside, and who's going to emerge the victor? It looks like Gomez goes for the heavy braking, and Chronic Opal just goes a little bit too deep on the brakes to try for the undercut, meaning as they come up into turn 3, it's the same as they entered turn 1, and Notnats right now 2.2 seconds back back on Picciola and more focused on the Mercedes behind him, the Dutchman behind him, Kalis one, trying to put pressure on the Atenza driver. As we see up front, it is the battle continues as Gomez goes defensive into turn 4 versus Chronic Opel, and now as they come out towards turn 5, you can see that Chronic has got the move to the outside, he's got the momentum, but he just can't find a way through. He hasn't got the ability to get the overlap enough in order to try and force a move or potentially go for a very daring undercut through 5. As they come up towards turn 7 and 8 on the third lap, then you can see Gomez makes a mistake. He goes very late on the brakes and he loses all of his momentum but knocks Chronic wide. But I think Gomez has lifted out respect in that, and Chronic is able to just about rejoin. Very daring stuff from Artuli drivers, and Gomez going wide out of turn 9. I think we're looking at a half-second penalty here, folks, to those track limits as Gomez goes defensive into turn 10, and there's a massive amount of contact, and Chronic Opel just gets taken apart by the two drivers battling for P2, and Picciola is up into P1. But the nature of that pass now, that is a very difficult one to call there, as Notnats is now up into P3 but goes wide, allowing Kalis one to get to his inside, come up into turn 13, and that overtake for P1 there. I think a lot of people are going to be raising eyebrows about and different opinions on that one, because that was a very controversial move. But meanwhile, Notnats right now up into P3, but with pressure from Kalis one and our Dutch running around in P5 behind these guys, as we see them all come down towards the start finish line to commence lap number 4, and immediately Notnats feeling a huge amount of pressure from Kalis one. The Dutch were piling it on versus the Brit here, and as they run into turn 1, Kalis one tries to go around the outside on the brakes, and he does it. He is up into P3. A nice move by Kalis one. That Mercedes really showing great form in the race. Wasn't as strong in qualifying perhaps, but working very well in the race indeed. And as they make their way down towards turn 4 here, you can see that he's got enough of a gap already to Notnats, and now Notnats has got a face full of Dutch in his mirror. Well, how about that, as we see up front Picciola in the Hyundai feeling a lot of competition for his fellow Hyundai driver. And whilst this is going on, let's take a quick flick back and see what happened. So as they're running down towards turn number 10 then on lap number 3, you're going to see that Picciola will pull to the inside here, and he just slings it out the inside. And the problem is there's contact between Gomez and Chronic Opel. Because of Picciola being up that inside, Gomez couldn't find anywhere else to go. So I get the feeling that it's going to be treated as an incident involving multiple drivers than just simply Gomez. But Gomez, as a result of that, has dropped all the way to P9 because of everything that happened there. And it's very unfortunate as people are picking up penalties left, right and centre in the midfield, including Jaff, who's burnt his penalty out of turn 9 immediately. And Picciola right now coming around to turn 12 and through turn 12, holding onto the position for the time being. But you can see that Chronic Opel is getting ever closer, and it means that he's just waiting to strike. I think the strike's going to come on the final lap. We see this from Chronic Opel time and time again. If he's behind the race leader, he won't go for the move until he absolutely feels it's the right time to do so. He's just waiting for that opportune moment. It's almost as if he's saying to Picciola right now, yes, frustrate yourself, overwork yourself, as Picciola does indeed go defensive into turn 1 initially, but then goes back onto the racing line. He's allowed the one move, of course, into the corner, and he does so, and Chronic Opel are not going for the move this time around, but you can see the pressure is getting to Picciola as the Finnish driver makes a mistake through 2. And Chronic Opel is now on his inside through 3 as a result of it, but he just hasn't quite got the overlap here. But Picciola is going to be panicking now and thinking this is getting tougher and tougher with each and every corner on each and every lap. And Chronic Opel now trying to go around the outside to inside for a cutback into turn 4, and it's not happening. But Pichi will not be liking this. This must be the most uncomfortable position to be in for anybody on the circuit when you've got a mad dash Australian literally showing you where all the different places he can overtake you is, and you have to react to every single one of them. And right now Kalis one holding off Notnats and our Dutch by a small margin as Notnats goes very deep into turn 7, and hold on a second, Chronic Opel is back into the lead, and Picciola has picked up a half-second penalty and goes sideways out to turn 9 and into the wall. So the Finnish driver has had his race go from great to bad to worse to terrible, and it's all in the space of 3 corners. Well, what happened there? So as we look back then, you're going to see that Picciola goes into turn 7, and it's a mistake from Picciola. He broke way too late and cut across the curve of turn 8, and that gave him the half-second penalty, and it was enough to disrupt his flow. So in the end, it was just the pressure that the Australian put on him, which was enough to make Picciola make a mistake, and Chronic Opel can now pull away a 2.5 second gap already past the final corner, and he's going to expand that gap even more as Careless One now finds himself in a P2. We would not have been expecting that going into race number 1, that I'm sure. And our Dutch right now has got Picciola breathing down his neck, and at a rapid rate of knots, the Hyundai driver from Finland trying to find a way back up to that podium on the final lap, as we see that Careless One has to go heavily defensive versus Notnats. That Atenza has got some impressive legs on it in terms of acceleration, and it is doing a phenomenal job of keeping with Careless One, but Careless One just seems so much more composed through the medium speed corners, and that is where he is getting those advantages. Further back down the order, we can see in the battle for P6, Pingo Phone going to the inside of Jaff coming out of turn 3, and I think Jaff just didn't have the momentum out of the corner, and now as they go 3 wide into turn 4, it is going to be, I think, Pingo Phone holding on for the time being, although Gomez goes up the inside of his fellow countryman, and out of turn 4, Gomez is up into P7 with a classic turn 4 move, and now making their way into turn 5, we can see that Slimmy Cam trying to hold off Me Not Stand for P9, and there's a little bit of contact as Jaff goes wide out of turn 5. I'm not sure if that was Slimmy Cam bump in the back of Jaff or Jaff just making a mistake, but Slimmy came up into behind the 3 wide into turn 7. You don't go 3 wide there, and Jaff goes through the middle of the pair of drivers. What on earth is going on there? I tell you, as we look back, that was some crazy stuff. So we're going to see Jaff here in between the two of them and just trying to find a way in. I think Me Not Stand cut his momentum, but Jaff carried too much and ping-ponged off the pair of them. Well, I think there's going to be some words between those drivers following the end of this race, as Jaff at P9 and Slimmy Cam now down to P10. But coming through the chicane on the final lap, he's led it the final lap with a lot of a comfort zone. He did everything he needed to, and he put the pressure on where he needed to. It will be the Australian of Chronic Opal who brings home the win in race number 1 by 5.2 seconds ahead of Careless One, who just held off the challenger Notnats for P2, Notnats for the P3 in, and Picciola pipping our Dutch on the final lap to P4. Behind them, it'll be Pingo Phone, who just about holds on for P6 ahead of Gomez, Me Not Stand in P8, Jaff in P9, and then Slimmy Cam will be rounding off our top 10 after that final lap incident at turn 7. The live with a P11 here, not the greatest opening race, but he's going to have plenty more opportunities. And then Mr. Watt, how it was a very difficult opening race. The British driver coming out of the final corner to complete our race order. Congratulations to all of our drivers, of course, but a special congratulations to our opening race winner, Chronic Opal in the Honda Genesis from Australia. Well, that has definitely set the tone for the racing this evening. It was fast, frantic, and it was quite pushy at times, but I don't think there was any malice intended by the drivers, as we can see here that, subject to any stewards' inquiries, our race winner with the very, very bright helmet, so much so, let me just go get my sunglasses, folks, because I'm going blind otherwise. 1 second. There we go, that's better. Chronic Opal winning by a margin of 5.1 seconds ahead of Careless One and Notnats GT rounding off our podium. Careless One and Notnats being very close at the end there, but the AMG just holding off the fast charging Atenza, setting good form, the pair of them in the variety pit cars. Picciola in the Hyundai coming home in P4 ahead of our Dutch in P5, and the fastest lap going to Chronic Opal, a 44.2 on lap number 6. And in fact, that is the fastest lap we have seen over the course of this evening so far, faster than qualifying. So Chronic Opal unleashing just a little bit more pace already. But a very good launch from Careless One, and I think that was really the story of Careless One's race. He had a very good launch off the line from P5, jumping up to P3 and getting himself right in the thick of things. That AMG being strong off the line, and then finding himself having to fight his way through and benefiting from the misfortunes of others. But as we make sure we save that replay, of course, I think the talking point will be with regards to the incident between Chronic Opal, Gomez and Peachy. Putting my personal perspective on it, folks, of course, I'm not a race steward or anything along those lines. I think from Peachy's perspective, he was just going for a move for P2, thinking that Chronic Opal was already clear. But the problem was that where Gomez then had nowhere to go with Peachy on his inside, Gomez gave that very light tap to Chronic Opal with the late braking as well to try and outbrake Peachy. And Chronic Opal had the smallest of taps, which spun him sideways, but he collected the car. Gomez, of course, waited being the sportsman, but it was very unfortunate Gomez waited as long as he had to, and it meant that he dropped so many places. Otherwise, I think Gomez would have still been in the top 5 by the end of it. But all of our drivers are making it out of that relatively unscathed. Nobody ending up with their race completely binned right at the end, albeit the results were perhaps not one driver may have expected. But we've got plenty more racing to go, and I'm sure Gomez is going to be coming up through that field like a rabid dog on a race number 2. But there is definitely a lot of talk down at the paddock right now between Peachy, Gomez and also Kreinik as to what happened in the hairpin. And it is one of those cases, I think, where they'll be talking about it a little bit after the race. I don't think there's going to be any animosity between it. It was a racing incident at best. I mean, the only person you could arguably attribute a little bit of blame to would be Peachy for the fact that he went for the move like that. But again, it's a natural racing move, so can you really apportion the blame? I don't think so. I think it will be classed as a racing incident, with Kreinik being just the innocent bystander and Gomez and Peachy both sharing 50-50 of the incident itself. So I don't think anybody's at fault there per se. But not sure what happened with regards to the starting positions in race number 1. There was a bit of confusion down at the paddock, and that's why we had that little bit of an interruption, because we were getting word that the grid positions were perhaps not set as expected, or a penalty was applied at the very last second, which we're not aware of. But hopefully that will go away as of race number 2 going forward. So apologies for the confusion there, folks. And let's find out what's going to happen in race number 2 as we get the time of day change, and then we are going to be racing once again at 6 laps to see who the winner is. As we say hello to Benji in the chat and Olaf Biscuit. Well, I think we've already said hello to Olaf Biscuit, but he gets a double hello with his phenomenal performance in the E Division 1 last night. In fact, a triple hello. Hello, 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 hello. Yeah, don't sign me up for the Barbershop Quartet anytime soon, folks. And all of our drives once again make their way out to the field, although Jeff has left the lobby. I'm not sure what's happened here, folks. I think Jaff has had to retire the car, unfortunately. There may be some technical issues. So as a result, Jaff has retired for the rest of the race evening. That is going to be resolved later on tonight. That's a bit unfortunate. So we are going to be down to 11 drivers now as of the race proceedings for the rest of tonight. We're just waiting right now for things to calm down a little bit down in the paddock. I think there's quite a few tempers brewing a little bit as well with some of the moves that were made. So this is a little bit unfortunate that Jeff has had to retire, but nonetheless, we do press on. We're just staying with Me Not Stand for the time being. Now, Me Not Stand not having the worst of races in race number 1, but I think you'll feel that there's plenty more opportunities to go. See Me Not Stand right now making his way up towards turn number 3. And we are getting word that there is a little bit of a disgruntle between some of the drivers for that instant on the final lap at turn number 7 with regards to Slimmy Cam, Jaff, and also I can't remember who else was on the inside at that point. So there's a little bit of a heated discussion about that. But I think everybody's just trying to calm the drivers down right now, Pies in particular, because there does seem to be a little bit of what's known as, well, I can't remember the mudslinging, and that's the phrase I'm looking at here. And I think Jaff's potential early retirement is not just down to technical issues, but it may also be some of the attitudes being conveyed. So we are just trying to calm people down right now, but we will be getting back underway very shortly. I'm going to take a brief breather to grab a glass of water. That's one of the things as well. Sometimes things don't go their way. I've been there myself in the divisions when I've raced in GTSRL, and with the short nature of these races, they can get a little bit hot-tempered, particularly in the 2 sprint races, and sometimes you just have to accept that. And yep, on your live stream, if you're racing, or indeed just racing in your cockpit, or you're racing chair or whatnot, you can swear and throw insults at the wall, but after that, when you cool down, you look back at it and think, you know what, it happened, we've got to move on. And I'm one of those racers. If you ever watch me race, folks, you'll know that I absolutely, when things go wrong, I'll be one of the first ones to throw the teddy out the pram, but try and get my composure back as quickly as possible. And I think that's something which people need to learn from. It happens, and that's the nature of the race. And you see it time and time again, whether in GTSRL, other sim racing leagues, or indeed in real world racing. It's about being able to regain your composure when things go wrong. That's what makes the difference. No, we are waiting to get race number 2 underway as we say hello to Yaya in the chat. Unfortunately, we have had a issue where one driver has retired from the rest of tonight's racing. We thought it was technical issues at first, but we have found out it was due to an incident between 3 drivers into turn 7, where the driver was effectively had their race ended, well not ended, but severely ruined. But we're getting underway with race 2 now. We just had that confirmation come through, but we've been trying to calm things down in the paddock. Race 1 was quite temperamental in a number of respects, but race number 2 is now about to come at you, folks, and we are go. So as we pan down to the grid for race 2, it is Chronicope on your right and Careless One's Mercedes AMG on the left. What a surprise. Not Nats behind in the Atenza. What could he achieve? And then Gomez in P7. He'll be looking to make up for lost time in race number 1. That's lights out and away we go, and Chronicope immediately getting a reasonable start, but Careless One, as expected with that AMG, getting the best of launches there, and he's up into first before they've even made it 300 metres down towards turn 1. So Careless One is going to be a race leader. As we see, we have got contact at the back between Mr. White and Valive, the 2 drivers who can't see one another, and that means we're going to have a major incident between them. I'm sure, as they make their way cleanly through turns 1 and 2, and we can see that Chronicope just slotting in, and our Dutch right now having a very sedate turn 3. In fact, a lot of our drivers had a very sedate opening couple of corners here, as we note that we have got an Aston Martin off in the background. I think that is Gomez who went off a little bit into turn 3, but keeping it together as Valive and Salimicam go side by side through turn 4, and Valive up the inside as Mr. Watt is off at turn 3. I think he's just made a mistake there. We'll take a look back at that in a sec if we get the chance to, but all our drivers settling down into some sort of order here, although Pingo Phone going for the move up the inside of Valive into turn 5. He hasn't got the momentum off the corner, and with his teammate behind him, he's got to make a decision about when he's going to let his teammate through, because Gomez is the one with the pace. And Gomez right now can't find a way through, and in fact is now stuck in a bit of a battle with Aminot stand behind him as they make their way up towards turn number 9 and down towards turn 10. And Chronicope already going on the offensive versus Careless One into the turn 10 hairpin. He's going to try and go around the outside, but Careless One goes heavy on the brakes there and says you shall not pass the time being. But I think Chronicope is already trying to get in the mind of the Dutchman and starting to size him up, and it's only 1 lap in to this 6-lap race. Behind all of this, of course, we have still that ongoing battle for P8 where Gomez and Pingo Phone have finally traded places, and that means now Gomez will be able to start making his way through the field as he looks to move up the inside of the line into the chicane, but it's not going to happen. So at the end of lap number 1, it is Careless One leading by the small margin of 2.5 tenths. Now 2 tenths ahead of Chronicope, followed by Not Nats, then it's Picciola, then Salimicam, then R Dutch, and then behind them with Valive having to burn a penalty, it's Gomez ahead of Pingo Phone, Me Not standing P9, Valive in P10, and then Mr. White in P11 right now as we come down in towards into turn 1 for the second time asking, and Krylikoval goes for a very early move on Careless One around the outside, and he has got it done. So now Krylikoval will feel that he can use the Mercedes AMG as a roadblock from Pete Giurla, and if Gomez gets back up into P3 or P2, he can break away and just use Careless One as that blocker for the time being. As we can see, they all come into turn 4, and behind in the battle for P6, it is Gomez on our Dutch right now, as Gomez looks at the cutback. He can't find a way through on the cutback, but he will have the momentum down to turn 5, but he goes to the outside. What with Dutch holding that inside line and going hard on the brakes here, you can see that Gomez cannot find a way through for the time being, and they have to settle down into an order once again. Now, as they come charging up into turn 7, it's worth noting that Gomez here will probably be thinking about where he can go past Dutch. He'll probably do it on the start, finish straight into turn 1, because he will have that momentum, he will have that extended slipstream period. But as they make their way out of 9 and now head down towards 10, coming to the end of sector 2, we can see that Krylikoval's already opened up a gap of 5.5 tenths to Careless One over the course of that, as there was some contact there between Pete Giurla and Notnats, and I think that Notnats lifted off the throttle there to respect the fact that Pete Giurla was knocked a little bit by Notnats, and so instead Notnats has decided to let Pete Giurla regain the place. And Slimmy Cam behind him right now, the driver at the heart of all the drama in race number 1, is now up into P5 after everything's been considered, and our Dutch finding itself in a very heavy defensive battle versus Gomez through the chicane there, and just about holding on for the time being. But I think that Gomez is going to be finding a way through coming down to turn 1, as we see there is a drag race coming down the start finish straight onto lap number 3 between Notnats and also Slimmy Cam here, and Slimmy Cam has got the initial advantage, although Notnats is on the inside, and that Atenza is strong with the brakes. He goes a little bit later on the brakes, that does Slimmy Cam, and the Atenza holds on, but Slimmy Cam tries to force a way in into turn 2. He tries to squeeze by the smallest of margins, and he backs out of it in the end. I think he's realised there wasn't going to be the space there, and Notnats was not going to give him the space in the end, so instead he's going to find another way around, as our Dutch and Gomez meanwhile battling side by side up into turn 4, and you can see that Gomez right now, well, the man who is on a mission to get back into the top 5 as soon as possible, and he's finally cleared Dutch going up into turn 4. A nice pass there by Gomez, very clean. It's what we come to expect from the Portuguese driver, one of the cleanest drivers in the recent flock of drivers to join GTSRL, as our Dutch goes very wide out of turn 5. It looks as though he got the power too soon and drops all the way down to P10, but he can build that back up, that I'm sure. It's me not stand right now, battling with Villeneuve for P8, and you can see that he just hasn't got the momentum compared to Villeneuve coming out of out of turn 7 and turn 8. But meanwhile, further up front, as me not stand goes a little bit wide on turn 9, he's got to be careful not to pick up that penalty, of course. We see further up front that the battle side by side into turn 5. It's side by side between Gomez and Slimmy Cam, and Gomez has gone for the move, and he's got it done versus Slimmy Cam. And I think Pingo Fo's going to try and follow his teammate through, and he can't find a way. I think Slimmy Cam says, look, one person can pass, but it's not a 2-for-1 special at the Spanish market today, or is it? As the Austrian goes for a move into turn 13, he had the momentum, and they're still side by side into the chicane, and Pingo Phone can't find a way to secure it. He is trying to squeeze himself alongside Slimmy Cam as much as possible, and it's just not working out. Instead, it's going to be a case that he's going to have to do it on the straight, but now he has got a face full of me not standing in his rearview mirror as we hop on board with Pingo Phone, and we look back from his car here, and he's probably got two minds as he's thinking, do I go for a move? And he's going to go for the move, but Slimmy Cam pulls to the inside here, and Pingo Phone has to react by taking evasive action. I think that might have been quite a late move over Slimmy Cam. He did it as late as he possibly could without breaking the rules, but that was very close, and Pingo Phone having to fishtail his way through turn 1, lost the place to me not stand. And let's just take a look back at that and see what happened there. So as they made their way down towards turn 1, what you're going to see is that Slimmy Cam is going to, I believe, react to Pingo Phone. As Pingo Phone sweeps out, he does indeed, blocking off Pingo Phone. And as they're coming into the braking zone, Slimmy Cam weaving under braking there. And I think that's going to be frowned at by the stewards, because that is dangerous in the FIA rulebook. And I think Slimmy Cam may have a little bit of the rulebook thrown at him, probably just a page or two rather than a whole chapter. But weaving under braking, that almost caused Pingo Phone to completely lose the car there. But nonetheless, as the racing continues right now, Krylikoval 1.8 seconds ahead of Careless One, who really has found a nice middle ground in that P2 spot. And if anything right now, that Mercedes is doing such a fantastic job. Of course, the hero of this race is the Hyundai of Krylikoval, running away right now, having passed Careless One. But the Mercedes driver is doing such a good job and keeping the laps in. And we know Careless One is one of the most consistent drivers when he races, and he's just demonstrating a consistent masterclass so far. Albeit I hope I haven't put the commentator's curse on him, of course. But as they all make their way through the chicane but once again, Notnats now starting to come under a little bit of pressure from Gomez. Gomez has finally closed that gap up. As we look back for Gomez's car here on lap number 4, coming on to lap number 5, we can see that Gomez is all over the back of Notnats, and now it's the long drag race down to turn 1. Notnats on the inside, Gomez on the outside, and I think Gomez will have this done. But of course, remember, Notnats is the master of late braking into turn 1. That attends to its very juicy brake discs, but Gomez goes round the outside, and Notnats does not try to shoehorn his way on the inside. As Pingo Phone goes round the outside of Me Not Stand, there's a little bit of contact between the two of them, but Me Not Stand gives Pingo Phone the space, and they're still side by side coming into turn 3, but it means that Pingo Phone's now got to try and find a way to cut himself to the inside, because he won't be able to hold that outside line forever, and Pingo Phone calms it down once again. And I think the patience is wearing on Pingo Phone. He wants to get through, he wants to get back at Slimmy Cam, he wants to get to that P6, and he's working as hard and fast as possible to do so, as Pingo Phone goes a little bit wide out of turn 4 there, but it's nothing too dramatic. And he's got to be careful because he's got Valave behind him, and I think Valave is trying to find a way into this fight for P7 if he can by the end of it, as we see that our Dutch right now really far back, and Mr. Watt meanwhile all the way back in P11 and not having a good time in race number 2 whatsoever. But meanwhile up front it's still Chronic Opal pulling away to 2.4 seconds now. It really is in sectors 2 and 3 where he pulls away as Pete Shirler burns a penalty, and this gives Gomez the opportunity here to find a way. And as Pete Shirler goes very deep into turn 10, it means that Gomez is going to get a nice chance going down to turn 1 of sure it's going to be turn 1 where he's going to have that Hyundai. The Finnish driver there making a mistake after burning the penalty, just missing his braking zone where he's lost the momentum on the penalty burn, and now Gomez is all over the back of him. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, you know what's coming. That Hyundai's got some legs, but it hasn't got the legs of the British Aston Martin. So as it comes out the final corner, it's South Korea versus the United Kingdom in terms of machinery. It's the Finn versus the Portuguese in terms of drivers. Who's going to win? Well, they come charging down towards turn number 1, and Gomez has got a lot of speed here, but is he going to be able to find a way through? He looks to the inside. It's a battle on the brakes, and does he nail the brakes? He goes very deep. In fact, he sends Pete Shirler wide, but as a result of it, Pete Shirler cuts back in, and Gomez rejoins coming off the circuit, and I think he's going to give the place up, and he does immediately give the place up, does Gomez, and then lets Pete Shirler take the lead position, and now they're back racing once again. But he's gone even wider, Gomez, and now he's been swamped by 2 cars as they make their way up towards turn number 4, and you can see that Gomez is having a disaster of it now. After one failed overtake, it's now a series of mistakes, and Notnats is up into P4 with those dirty tyres. Gomez is struggling as Notnats seems to have picked up a 1 second penalty out of nowhere, and Slimmy Cam now is the man in P4 and closing down on P3. Slimmy Cam has literally come from nowhere, and now the British driver charging up towards turn number 9, doing a very good job of it right now and making his way into the corner, and Gomez goes to the inside of, well, Notnats into turn 9. I've never seen that kind of a move before, ladies and gentlemen, into turn 9, and he's got it done when he could have just waited, but I guess the impatience was there, and he's decided to go for it. As Pete Shirler has made another mistake at the hairpin, and I think Pete Shirler is starting to struggle on his tyres, but one driver who hasn't been struggling all race right now as they're starting to come to the end of that, and Pete Shirler is definitely really having difficulty with tyres, is the Australian of Chronic Opal, who will make it 2 from 2, having led from almost the start of the race to the very end. Congratulations to Chronic Opal, finishing 4.3 seconds ahead of Callus 1. The Dutchman doing a good job for second, and Pete Shirler holds off Slimmy Cam for P3, but in a dramatic late turn, Slimmy Cam with the penalty, meaning that Gomez is going to get promoted, and Me Not Stand as well finishes P5. Notnats, however, with his penalty finishing P7, Pingo Phone in P8, our Dutch in P9, the Live in P10, and then it's Mr. Watt making his way to the end of the lap right now. And goodness me, I think Mr. Watt is just on a cool down lap. It has just not worked whatsoever for Mr. Watt, and he's just making his way to the end of the lap right now. But of course, credit to all of our drivers for finishing the distance. And what a crazy race that was, and that was unexpected in the end. And I think Gomez was thinking that he completely missed out on the top 5, only to get back into the top 5 right at the end there, and he is going to be fired up for the final race of tonight. But as Mr. Watt now comes through the final set of corners through turn 16 to complete this second race, he'll probably be thinking about what he could do in race number 3. Congratulations to all of our drivers, of course, but we must give special congratulations to our race winner, Chronic Opal, making it 2 out of 2 tonight. What a crazy second race. And whilst things did calm down a little bit on lap number 1, it erupted pretty quickly soon after. But here's your final result, subject to any steward's inquiries, of course. Chronic Opal bringing it home, 4.2 seconds clear of KLS1. And third place went to Pete Giurla, rounding off our podium, the Finnish driver there. Gomez with the P4 ahead of Me Not Stan. Chronic Opal picking up the fastest lap at 1:44.7 on lap number 6. Once again, seemingly leaving it all to last, matching his qualifying time this time around. And we've only got one more race to go, race number 3, the strategy race. And, well, what a set of strategies we're going to be expecting to see now. Given the fact that last night we saw a lot of drivers pit at the end of lap 1 and then go long on a set of tyres for 10 laps in the 11-lap race, as Mr. Watt also seems to have some technical issues. And I think Mr. Watt has retired the car. That is a technical issue with the car, so they will not be bringing that out. I think some of our drivers are just going to be taking a brief breather. And as we're really counting down now to the next race, the story of race number 2 really, well, KLS1 had the launch off the line and he'll know that he has got a fantastic launch, and Chronic Opal I think will work with him here. But in the strategy, I think these two will go long on the strategy because they'll just want to break away from the field. We know one driver in particular who is struggling on the tyres is Pete Giurla, although Pete, I think, has switched back to the Aston Martin now rather than the Hyundai, so we're seeing a car change here. And this could be in order to try and go longer on the tyres because Peachy was really struggling with that Hyundai, now making his way out of the pits with the Visit Estonia mobile. But we'll have to wait and see. And Notnats as well, I think he'll feel as though he's got a lot more potential to show in race 3. As we say hello to a Viper in the chat, and we hope you're doing well, Viper, indeed everybody here. But that is the big question now in regards to strategy. If you pit early, particularly if you're one of the drivers down the back, what happens if the drivers around you pit as well? You've got to work together, as we saw last night, particularly Luco33, who had a very difficult experience pitting so early and then being caught up in effectively a 5-way battle because 5 drivers all pitted together and it all came out together, and they all lost a lot of time to the guys up front and had to thread the needle between one another. But with regards to is it legal to change cars between races, I'm not 100% sure on that. I haven't heard anywhere that it is illegal. We're just waiting now for the countdown for race number 3. Yeah, there has definitely been a lot of drama down at the paddock tonight, folks. I tell you, we do get a little bit of drama every so often, but tonight has been the most dramatic one that I've seen in quite some time. But still, we move on from the drama and we look forward to more action out on the circuit as we just very quickly make sure we have saved the replay for race number 2. Getting that saved replay paranoia, of course. But we're now down to 10 drivers as it currently stands from the starting 12. I think Gomez will be absolutely kicking himself with that attempt on Pete Giurla. I think if he just realised that he had it almost done, or he could have waited a little bit later perhaps up into turn 4, he would have been third. But in the end, he finished quite a bit further back. We're just staying with KLS1 right now as we're waiting for that countdown for race number 3. And KLS1 putting on a little bit of a spectacle right now, weaving from side to side down the start-finish straight. So we have had that one car change from Picciola to the Aston Martin DBR9 for the final race of this evening. I think it was a valid gamble though to go for that Hyundai. Now he's got to get used to the car again. As we get the change of time of day, and we are about to get underway with race number 3. We're just taking a brief breather right now, of course, as is our motto. We're ready now. We are counting down. I think we are trying to give Mr. Watson time to fix some of the technical issues that he's experiencing right now. But I don't think it's a looking fortunate. I think we are going to be racing with a 10-man grid. Sorry for the quiet period, folks. We are just waiting to get underway here. You could squeeze in a few wild cards. I must admit, I'm surprised we're not seeing some mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars at Catalonia due to the rotational nature of the circuit. Yeah, we're just waiting for clarification as to what's going on right now. But we are expecting race number 3 within the next 2 to 3 minutes. Again, we will have, well, hopefully we will see a little bit more variety as well, as we're about to get underway then with race number 3. Here it comes, ladies and gentlemen, the final points race of this evening. Who's going to be winning by the end of it? So as we pen down to the grid then for the final time this evening, it is Chronicope on your right, Careless One on your left, Picciola behind and Gomez on 4th place. But keep an eye out for Notnats in P7. What can the Atenza driver do from so far back? And it's lights out and away we go, and Chronic Opal getting the worst of the starts of our top 3 drivers, and we can see that Picciola actually got a better start than Careless One in the opening sequence there. But of course the Mercedes is now coming live, and Careless One is being pushed a little bit by Picciola as they all come condescending down in towards turn number 1. It is 4 wide, and Gomez looks to the inside and creeps out the inside of Picciola, who was caught a little bit by surprise there, and me not staying up into P5 and holding on to it for the time being. But as they all make their way into turn number 3, you can see that Pingo Phone trying to find a way past our Dutch. A little bit door to door there, but not too much leaning by looks of things. All our drivers making it through as Slimmy Cam drops to the rear of the field, getting it a little bit wrong by running out onto the runoff area at turn 3. And Pingo Phone has made the greatest gain up towards P5 right now, as we can see that Gomez also making some moves and coming down into turn 5 for the first time of asking. We know that Pete Giella feeling a bit of pressure from Pingo Phone, but Pingo having his own pressure from Me Not Stan, who went for a move up the inside. Pingo Phone gave the space, and now they're side by side up into 7. And I think Pingo Phone is going to be giving this one up, because Me Not Stan will have that racing line. And whilst he won't have the momentum as much as he would have liked, I don't think Pingo Phone's going to be finding a way through any time soon up into turn 9 right now. It'll be turn 10 if he's going to come back at him, as we see the Live goes very wide, and he's spun the car. The Live has spun it out of turn 9, and that is a disaster. As meanwhile, in the battle for P2, Careless One feeling a lot of pressure for Gomez, and behind them, Me Not Stan and Pingo Phone not coming to blows this time, but Pingo going wide out of the hairpin, and he's got to be very careful with that sausage curb, because if you touch that sausage curb too hard, it'll send you spinning. And we all love a good sausage, don't we, ladies and gents, with regards to riding on one. But nonetheless, as Pingo Phone makes his way down into turn 13, we can see that as all our drivers make their way through the chicane, it's now settling into a little bit of an order. And at the end of a lap number 1, it is Chronic Opal making his way out of turn number 16 and onto the second lap ahead of Careless One, who is in a major battle with Gomez already. And we're going to continue to watch this, folks, before we go through our order here, as nobody is pitted at the end of lap number 1. And our P2 and P3 drives Careless One on the inside, Gomez on the outside. Gomez trying to go late on the brakes. This is Careless One, and he just does it, cutting off the nose of Careless One in the process, and goes around the outside. As we see behind them, Pingo Phone and our Dutch also coming to blows in a similar fashion, and their battle is continuing up towards turn number 3. Pingo Phone is ahead of our Dutch. He's back up into P6, but it was very close between the pair of them. As we look up towards P4, and we can see that Pete Giella in a battle with Me Not Stan right now, and Me Not Stan having come on leaps and bounds since the first 2 races, and now really in that battle for P4 and reveling in the fight for that position in the top 5 right now, as he looks to the inside of Pete Giella into turn 5, but he hasn't quite got the overlap there on the inside and can't make the move stick, as he has to back out of it. But as they all make their way now down towards turn 7 on lap number 2, you can see that behind Pingo Phone has finally found a little bit of clear space on circuit and can go racing after the chaos and carnage that he's been through tonight. He'll be grateful for a little bit of peace and can now start to deploy some pace as well. I say that, and then he goes extremely wide out of turn 9, and that is going to be at least a half-second penalty, and he's already getting ready to burn it. I think, as you can see it coming down towards the hairpin, and our Dutch goes to the move. That is a huge send, a way too big a send, and Pingo Phone, because he lifted off there, actually got rid of the penalty before it was applied to him, and it means that our Dutch now has dropped to P7 once again. A smart move by Pingo Phone there, playing it to his strengths, and knowing that he's got a penalty, he decided to get rid of it as soon as possible. Gomez, meanwhile, in P2 and got past Careless One, making his way through the chicane right now, and we see that Valave has dropped quite a way down the order. I think that's Valave in P10 right now. I'm not 100% sure, but we can see that all of our drivers are making their way around the circuit to complete lap number 2, and indeed we have now only got 9 drivers, so Valave has retired the car, and that means we have only got 9 individuals racing, and Notnats all the way down the order. But I think Notnats may have gone for a tyre change. Something has happened there, as we see Gomez and Careless One going side by side into turn 1 once again, and Gomez getting the better of the pair, as Careless One tried to find a way through on the outside this time and has botched his line completely, losing him the best part of 8 attempts to Gomez, and as a result now he's going to have Pete Giella in his mirror shortly. The Mercedes driver here just needs to calm it down a little and realise that whilst he may not be in P2 right now, he's on for some very solid points on the podium if he keeps it consistent, as he has done for so long tonight. He can't fall now, surely. As meanwhile behind them in the battle for P6, Pingo Phone and Slimmy Cam. Well, Slimmy Cam is up into P7. That's probably happened into turn 1, but we didn't catch it on camera in the little Aston Martin V12 Vantage Mobile, and our Dutch behind them trying to find a way into the mix as they all make their way into turn 7. And I don't think Notnats has gone for his pit stop yet. I think there may have been an instant between Notnats and Valave, but how it's turned out is that Notnats is down in P9 because of everything that's happened. And well, as we look up front, we can see a number of our drivers here just trying to keep it within track limits coming out of turn 9. It's been a very difficult night for our drivers. Catalonia is one of the hardest circuits to race around, particularly in such a competitive field, because it literally pushes you to the limits, and the track limits here are relentless. But what I can say is, in terms of relentless, Chronic Opal is on a relentless charge, having already set the fastest lap on lap number 2 of a 45.1. A phenomenal lap on an opening set of tyres, and indeed with heavy fuel in the tank, and he is still on a mission. He is the man on a charge. I think he's trying to prove a point that he wants 3 out of 3. And he wants the perfect evening as he sets a 44.6. Chronicopal. Well, where was that in qualifying, you got to wonder, as Pingo Phone is into the pits from P6, and this is the first pit stop that we've seen, as we see in the rear of your camera shot there, that we do have our Dutch burning a penalty, and that's going to cost him massively here, as Notnats tries to find a way back into the fight. But Pingo Phone will be grateful to have pitted so early, and to be the only driver who's pitted, of course, because that is going to give him a tactical advantage, and now he can put his foot to the floor and just simply go for it on a fresh pair of tyres. And he's going to be coming out of the pits any second now, and he begins his campaign once again with that tyre change. But the field's opening up a little bit right now, folks. It must be said that as they're making their way around through the end of Sector 1 onto Sector 2, we haven't got too many drivers close to one another, so it is going a little bit quiet on the field right now, but that's where the strategic element starts to play, and we can see that Pingo Phone has gone for that tyre change, as was expected, going for a fresh pair, and now we should expect Pingo Phone to really start to close down that gap to the top 5, or particularly 5th place. That will be his target by pitting so early. But of course, how will the other drivers, aware of the fact that Pingo was the first to flinch, how will they react as we see Gomez going very wide out of turn 9? And I think we're going to be expecting a half-second penalty. Indeed, he picks one up, and he's going to have to burn that at the start-finish straight, and he's going to do so in short order, that I'm sure. But this will bring Careless One right back into the thick of it, along with Picciola. Well, that half-second penalty down the start-finish straight is really the equivalent to about a 1.2-second penalty, because of the fact you lose so much momentum with the straight being so long. And so now Careless One will be aware of that. He'll see the little red flash next to Gomez's name, and he'll be thinking, right, I'm going to have you, sunshine, as they make their way down towards turn 1, or I'm going to be right up your rear end at least. But behind them, me not standing right now in P5, but running behind these guys, I don't think he can capitalise too much, but nobody else pitting out of our top 5 at the moment. And we can see that Careless One immediately realising and capitalising on Gomez losing so much speed, and Gomez staying to the inside like a brick wall, but he hasn't got the pace here, and unless he's going to really go late on the brakes, which I think he doesn't need to, I think this is a little bit of a silly idea for Gomez to go so late on the brakes. He's made it work this time, but it is going to catch him out like it did in the previous race if he doesn't get it right. He's held on for now, but now Careless One's all over the back of him, and it means Picciola is only going to get closer to these guys running the Aston Martin now. He is going to have an advantage in the fact that he could just simply saunter on behind them, and if he decides to perhaps pit at the end of this lap, for example, then he may actually jump these guys in the field, because their fighting is going to cost them so much time. And of course, he won't want to get too bunched up behind them, because you've got that threat of Pingo Phone potentially getting into the mix of this. But we'll wait and see. But meanwhile, me not stand in that P5, just looking on right now and probably wondering how he needs to get into that fight. How can he do it? Well, he's going to have to go just that little bit faster if he can unlock that potential. But the closest fight on circuit right now is our battle for P2, as we look back from the vehicle of Gomez, who on the previous lap was setting a 46.2, obviously with the penalty and needing to burn that, so that compromised his lap a little bit. But you can see that Gomez here really trying to hold on to that P2 and doesn't want to let that Mercedes through. And as he goes a little bit skew-iffy coming out of turn 10, getting a bit of snap oversteer, but collecting it in the end. Will he be pitted at the end of that, or will Careless One, or will Picciola? If I was Peachy right now, this is where I'd probably be pitting, because I know that if the guys in front of me continue to fight, I'm only going to get held up in a fight here, where I could perhaps jump them by going onto those fresh tyres a little bit prematurely at the halfway distance. Gomez and Careless One both staying out, and Picciola also doing the same. So no pit stop from our P5 man, as Me Not Stand continues as well, and Slimmy Cam in P6 right now in a bit of a quiet one, and makes his way almost into the pits. I thought that was going to be a pit stop, but it's not in the end. And Notnats will almost, oh goodness me, and Notnats bouncing off of the turn 14 curb there, the race curb, catching the Atenza driver out, and it has not worked out for Notnats, as we are waiting for everybody to pit, of course. And I think Notnats is going to be into the pits, recognising that his race right now is a bit done and dusted, and he's just going to try and bring that car home after his pit stop. But Pingo Phone is the man to watch right now. He has lost a second and a half to Chronicopal over the last lap, but meanwhile in the battle for P2, we can see that Careless One is getting closer and closer to Gomez, lap after lap, corner after corner, but Gomez is just not letting him find a way through right now. And I think because of that, what we can see is that Gomez is doing a fantastic job of just holding off Careless One. But how much time is it costing him? That's the big question, of course. Well, the fact nobody else has pitted right now, but surely somebody's got to recognise these guys fighting is an opportunity to pit early and jump them. But nonetheless, as Gomez makes his way through turn 9 and Careless One in the wash at the back of the Portuguese car here, both drivers going wide onto turn 9, and Careless One will definitely be getting a penalty for that. But I'm not sure about Gomez as they break their way down into turn 10, and Careless Carlos one immediately with that penalty, and he'll have to burn that on the start-finish straight, and this is where Pete Giola could potentially capitalise. Or if I was Carlos one right now, I would tuck it into the pits and burn the penalty through the pit stop. That's one way you can get around the whole issue, of course. As you see, comes out of turn 12 here, and we'll wait to see if anybody pits at this lap, as Kreinikoval now has an 8-second lead on everyone and pits at the midway point, deciding to take the conservative approach of splitting the race into two halves rather than going long to the end. And Carlos one and Pete Giola is into the pits. So this is where Pete Giola, if he's going to capitalise, it's the time for him to do so, and he's got to absolutely put in a banger of an outlap in order to get the most out of it. As we see our Dutch now making his way through the final corner. And what about Slimmy Cam? Well, Slimmy Cam has dropped down to P7, it should be noted. And our Dutch is now into the pits as well. And where's this going to bring Pingo Phone out in relation to everyone? So as Pingo's coming out of the chicane here, and there's not too much fighting amongst the individuals, we're going to be keeping our eyes on Pingo Phone as he comes out of the final corner. Well, Kreinikoval is definitely going to be coming down to turn one before him, as will be Pete Giola, who's making his way out of the pits right now. But what about Pingo Phone? Well, Slimmy Cam has come into the pits, and Pingo Phone has jumped Slimmy Cam by a good few hundred yards here. As you can see, Pingo Phone is making his way down to turn one. At the rear of your pitch, you can see Slimmy Cam. So Pingo Phone has already cleared one of his rivals by making that early pit stop, and Slimmy Cam will now be aware of that and trying to chase after him. But I think Pingo Phone's got the mileage to go on those tyres, and he'll be able to do it. Now, as they make their way through lap 7, then you can see right now with Gomez leading for the time being, albeit he's got to pit along with Carlos one. The gap between these guys has opened up with Carlos one having to burn that penalty. The gap opens to 2.4 seconds, and Me Not Stand only 1.8 seconds behind Carlos one. But remember, these guys are effectively at the moment approximately P3 and P4 rather than P2 and P3, albeit Pete Giola may have something to say about that, having gone into the pit a lap before these guys. But as they come through sector 3, will they pit this time, of course, is the big question on everyone's mind. At least it's on my mind, and where they're going to come out. Now, if I was in Carlos one shoes, I would pit at the end of this lap because I need to react to the fact that Pete Giola has come into the pit. Alternatively, what about Gomez? And Gomez stays out, but Carlos one, they're both staying out for another lap, so they are extending it here, and Me Not Stand continues to stay out as well. But what about our Dutch? He's blocking up Kreinikoval at the moment, but I think he'll realise soon that he hasn't got the pace of the championship leader right now, and if he's not going to pit, then the championship leader, and our Dutch picks up a half-second penalty. Well, Kreinikoval will be happy with this, because as our Dutch builds up towards the straight, he's going to have to burn that penalty, and it means Kreinikoval takes fourth place back. I think the Australian is onto a very comfortable win at this point. As you can see, Pete Giola is gradually building up that momentum, and Pingo Phone right now as well, just putting in those solid laps and getting the job done, as Slimmy Cam makes his way down towards the final corner and then goes on to lap number 8. As for not laps, it's more of a time trial session right now for the Atenza driver after a disastrous opening stint, but still he's carrying on all the same, and that's the spirit we love to see, soldiering on to the bitter end no matter what the cost. But as we can see, Gomez right now leading our drivers around on track, and 2.2 seconds is the gap between himself and the army of Dutchmen chasing after him, starting with Carlos one, of course, and it's 2.7 seconds between him and his fellow countryman, Me Not Stand. You can see that the times are starting to fall off for these drivers as Me Not Stand goes out onto the dirt there for turn 9, and he's going to have some dirty left-hand tyres, and that's going to cost him a little bit of grip for the right-hander at turn 9, but he does get it nailed quite nicely there. And now these guys, of course, surely will be thinking about pitting any time soon, because Pete Giola's got to be putting in some very fast laps in order to be catching up. Well, at least that's what I'd have to do if I was in Pete Giola's shoes right now. You'd need to do it in order to jump these guys or get yourself in the thick of that fight for what is effectively P2 in this race once all the pit stops are over. Now, of course, these guys could come out on the same tyres they went in on. They are allowed to do that, but again, it depends on the tyre wear, as Gomez goes longer and Carlos one does the same, and Me Not Stand, he's coming into the pits. So Me Not Stand pitting now, and I think this is going to be a potential attempt at an undercut on the leaders as Kreinikoval makes his way into the final corner and completes another lap of the circuit. And our Dutch does the same, but remember that our Dutch still has a pit stop to take. Now, Me Not Stand right now still in the pits. Now, where's this going to bring him out in relation to Pete Giola? Peachy coming out the forward in the corner right now as we get that lovely sweeping shot as they make their way onto at the start-finish straight. And keep an eye out here as we switch the camera around to the front-hand side of the car. We'll be looking at Pete Giola on the right-hand side of the screen. And there's Me Not Stand coming out the pits, and Pete Giola has jumped him through the pit stop. So the strategy has paid off for the Finnish driver, and the Dutchman will have the thing clear in his sights, and he's got 3 laps to try and hunt him down. And I think with a gap of 2. 2.2 seconds. Anything is possible right now, but he's got to get those tyres switched on as soon as possible. And the gap to our leader right now is 25.5 seconds. And I think Peachy will have done enough if Gomez and Callis one pit for tyres. I think he will have done enough to get himself right into that fight. And as we take a look at the telemetry data for Gomez and Callis 1, you can see that Gomez's tyres starting to show significant wear on that front left as we would expect, whereas with Callis 1 the tyres are absolutely pristine. So Callis 1 will definitely be thinking about not changing tyres, but what about Gomez with those heavily worn front left tyre in particular? It may be the case that he does need to take a tyre change, as Krajnikov is just sauntering around and having pretty much the time of his life right now in P3, and our Dutch in P4. Of course, with those tyres starting to come towards their end of life, with that heavy wear on the front left tyre, which is taking a lot of wear into the into the left hand hairpin. Well, you can see on the heavy braking zone didn't quite work out. It got a little bit too heavy on the wear. But what about up front as Gomez goes around once again and Callis 1's into the pits? Now, from Callis 1's perspective, the big question will be asked: will he take the tyre change, and then how will Gomez react to this? Gomez will surely have that in mind as we see Krajnikov will come around to complete his 9th lap of the circuit. 2 more to go for what is expected to be our race winner. As he makes his way across our timing line, we can see that in the pits right now, Callis 1 coming in, and does he take a change of tyres? That is the big question. He does not. So how is this going to play out? Of course, well, Krajnikov has cleared him, and Picciola, this might be a mission too far. Peachy haven't gone for that tyre change. Will have to know in the back of his mind that surely Callis 1 did not change tyres, and now he's got to strike. But you can see that he has put significant wear on his tyres already, and they're about as worn as Callis 1's are, and Callis 1 has been on those tyres for so many more laps. Callis 1 doing a phenomenal job of managing those tyres over this race distance, and he's going to be the one to beat. And now that forces Gomez into a position where he has to come out on the same tyres he went in on, otherwise he concedes what will be P2 to Callis 1 and potentially P3 to Picciola, and he's got to be aware of that surely, as Pingo Phone right now hasn't been able to capitalise on all this, although he's going to have the position on our Dutch, we reckon, but he may not be able to capitalise on Gomez, so it might be a P6 for Pingo as he makes his way into turn 5 for the 10th time of asking. And behind right now, Slimmy Cam having a quiet session along with Notnats. But up front, here's your race leader at the moment. He's gone long, but he has to come in at the end of this lap to at least have a pit stop, if not also a tyre change. And I think Gomez is going to be feeling this now, in the fact that front left tyre is so heavily worn, where it's been lent on so much under braking and through the corners. And as he comes into the pits, now it is the crunch time. Is he going to come out ahead of Callis 1? As we can see that our Dutch right now coming out of turn 12, it's a long way back to Callis 1. Mind you, it is an incredibly long way back, and that time goes quickly as Callis 1 will now be absolutely hammer and tongs that, I'm sure, through the chicane here, looking to try and get everything out of the car. And our Dutch going into the pits as well, so he's clear and he'll be coming out the pit shortly. And Callis 1 now making his way round as we flip over to Gomez's pits, and we can see that he hasn't gone for the tyre change. So how's it going to pan out as they come in the drag race down towards turn 1? I think Gomez has done it, ladies and gentlemen. I think he's going to come out in front, but it's going to be by such a small margin. As you see, coming into the corner, it is Gomez ahead of Callis 1, but the tyres will be in Callis 1's favour, and Picciola wasn't able to get in amongst this fight because the two in front of him decided not to change their tyres. Well, Peachy did the right thing of trying to go for it, splitting the race in two. It was the best thing he could do to put the pressure on them and secure himself P4 as the minimum, but it just hasn't worked out here unless they really start fighting. But I think Gomez has just got a little bit of an edge over Callis 1, although I say that Callis 1 takes half a tenth out of him in sector 1 alone, and then sector 2 into turn 5 he's already taken a tenth, but he's gone late on the brakes and he's gone a little bit wide at turn 5. It's so close between these two, and it literally is the legs must be worn, the tyres must be worn, they must be just hoping for it to end. And in the case of Gomez, he'll be wishing it would end right now, because he'll want that P2. He'll have worked so hard for it, he'll feel that he's earned it with blood, sweat and tears. But Callis 1 will want a stab at it at the very last corner if he can get it, and they're coming down to the hairpin right now. And will Callis 1 go for a late dive? I don't think he will. I think he's going to follow him through, and you can see Gomez has made a mistake. He's gone deep, but Callis 1 can't capitalise on it, but he's all over the back of him, and with only 4 corners to go, it's going to be anyone's guess who comes out on top, but it's no one's guess who's going to win this race. It's 3 out of 3 tonight for the Australian. Krajnikov Michael wins the third race of round number 2 for EU Division 2. And Gomez, can he hold on? He's held Carlos one off for so long in this race, and he does it. The Portuguese does it. He beats Carlos one to the line by 0.3 of a second, and Picciola looks on in P49. It was a good result nonetheless, and Me Not Stand brings it home with a top 5 finish. The Dutchman doing a good job there. Pingo Phone 4.5 seconds down in P6. He'll be pleased with that P6, all things considered. Slimmy Cam coming out the final corner, bringing home a P7 for his team, the British driver, and then it is our Dutch in P8, and then last but not least, making his way out onto the final corner right now. Give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, because he had a disastrous race, but he stayed in it. The Atenza of Notnats coming home in 9th, last but not least of our running drivers, with the one retirement of Alive early on in the race. Congratulations to all our drivers, but congratulations to our triple winner, Chronic Opal. Well, what a race to conclude on. It was a very strategy-filled race. It was a quiet race in the end, but still it worked out. And here are the final results, subject to any stewards' inquiries. Chronic Opal are winning the race by a margin of 12.9 seconds over Gomez, and Careless One rounding off the podium, just missing out on a P2 there, with Gomez going for the late strategic call. Picciola coming home in P4, and Me Not Stand rounding off our top 5 in race number 3. And Chronic Opal setting the fastest lap of 1:44.418 on lap number 9, only a tenth off the lap he set in race number 1, which is the fastest lap we've seen all evening, well beyond the qualifying pace as well. Well, that is our points races complete for tonight, but of course now we move on to King of the Karts. As we just take a brief breather. And what phenomenal racing tonight. And for me, tonight, my driver of the day, I'll be honest with you folks, I think it would have to be Gomez. The reason I say that is because race 1 did not go Gomez's way whatsoever, but he stuck with it, and in race number 2 it didn't quite all go his way either, but he kept with it and picked up a better result to put him in the position to go for that P2 in the end, and he was so consistent. There were a couple of near miss points with regards to the braking, but then again mistakes happen to all of us, but Gomez in the end really did find a way to get himself back into those podium positions by the end of the night. As we say hello to Slim Yeezus in the chat. And I think Picciola switch to the Aston Martin definitely paid off in race number 3. That tyre wear being a huge factor in race number 3. We're just waiting out for King of the Karts as everybody is starting to wind down. Alrighty folks, well we're going to be having the King of the Kart session. I get the feeling I'm going to have to fix the camera on my kart. So I will just very quickly enter the kart. One sec. I just don't want to smash the keyboard. There we go. Waiting patiently to get off the rev limiter. We're looking forward to what can happen in EU Division 3 tomorrow night, of course. What fantastic racing overall tonight. Followed on in the vein of EU Division 1 from last night. I mean, I haven't got much of a voice left, so I don't know how I'm going to do EU Division 3 tomorrow night, but I'll give it my best shot nonetheless. Oh, that is one heck of a camber change for the kart. Thank you, Jerry. I look forward to it. I really do. It'll be good fun, I'm sure. Nice try, Peachy. Nice try. Alright, here we go then. King of the Karts for EU Division 2. Let's try and get on that podium this time. I'm sure you'll get me in the race. Well, hello there. Oh, hello. Somebody gave me the good old shove up the rear. Now that yet. Reminds me of running the Red Bull Junior around here the other day, actually, this kart. Rear end's just sliding every so often through the camber. It's a nice feeling. Go on, Krynick, let's break away, come on. We'll bring the Austrian with us as well. Let's work together, come on, dude. Come on, Pingo, work with me here. We've got a good gap to the guys behind. Run. Let's run. I say we've got a good gap. I just realised who's behind us. Oh. Oh no. No, Pingo. Oh, no. Oh, it's Mario Kart with Peachy. That was some serious Mario Kart right there. I feel like my life is just an impending murder scene right now in this go-kart. I'm trying to be smart about when I go for the lead. Oh, he's gone. I'll let him have it. I'm happy to take that P2. I survived some of the most difficult racing there. I just can't do all the knocking people about that everyone else can. I'll let him have it. Oh, I'll take that P2. Alrighty then, folks. Well, that is King of the Karts, and your final results, subject to no stewards' inquiries because it's King of the Karts. We don't do stewards, although we might have to now, thinking about it. Krynik Opal, myself, and Pingo on the podium in descending order, and then Not Nats and Martin rounding off our top 5. And yes, that is the conclusion of tonight's viewing. Thank you very much to join us, and thank you of course to our drivers for entertaining us, and we'll be back tomorrow night same time for EU Division 3 as we bring the curtain down on the Catalonia circuit as of tomorrow night, and we look at our lower league drivers who are no less pretty than our other league drivers of course, and we expect plenty of racing ahead. But thank you for tuning in, and until tomorrow night, remember to stay safe, stay well, and stay smiling, but most importantly, as always when racing, remember to stay on track. Good night.